Ka-ching.
What time is it?
20:59 and 59 seconds.
Wow. That's amazing.
That is. Like, we're on time.
I know.
In fact, you were early, Jeff.
By a few seconds, but there's a lag here, so everybody on the chat room's going, no, you weren't. Let's see. I'm trying to... Oh, I have too many trackpads here. Okay.
Well, just flush a few.
So hello everyone. It's the two captains are here, Captain Nick and Captain Jeff. Yes, Rebecca, don't faint.
Steady on, go.
And what I mean by that is, yes, we have started on time, and we are waiting for the lovely Dr. Steph, and she should be home pretty soon. But we decided we're going to go ahead and just start the stream. The show itself, well, who knows when that will start. But, you know, there's a good chance we'll be starting soon. We're not sure yet whether or not Captain Dana will be joining us today. He's feeling a bit under the weather and is currently napping to see if his disposition might improve. And that's his words, not ours. Yeah, not having a good day.
No, I don't think he wants to take it out on the listeners.
Yeah. So we'll see if he feels up to joining us or not. He is still in his training, and I think his simulator check ride is Saturday, right? Is that what he said?
Yeah,
I believe.
And then he's worried. He's a worried man because he's got an injury which stretches back many years, and it's a recurrence. He hopes it's not going to be serious, but he worries that it will. And the last thing poor Dana needs is more worry.
Right
now, he needs to have a clear head and feel fit and happy to just do his job.
Yep. So Dana, if you're watching this presently or in the future, we hope that everything works out well for you.
Absolutely.
All the best wishes. All right, let me do some sound checks here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain, Glenn Quagmire. We're looking about a 4.5-hour flight time today. We got clear skies, good visibility. The temperature in Atlanta is 64 degrees. The flight's going to be a little longer than we've expected. We've got some very strong headwinds, giggity. Flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff.
And actually, it's 83 degrees here in Roswell.
Is it? That sounds hot.
Which is that would be 29 and a half.
Oh, well, we had it that warm like 10 days. No, not even that. 5 days ago, but it's cooled off back to more seasonal.
Yeah, well, for your bank holiday weekend, didn't you have some warm weather?
Yeah, it was gorgeous. 28 and a half at Northolt, RAF Northolt, which is North London. Nice. We're not, we weren't that badly off down here. It was gorgeous. But back to like the teens now, 17, 18, which is, quite comfortable for spring, but not warm.
Right. But it's not like you got to go out and wear a heavy coat or anything.
Oh no, I'm still in shorts in the daytime. I put a pair of jeans on now because the window's open.
Liz is 29, or is she doing the conversion for me?
I think that's her age.
That's it. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh so hard. That's like if somebody said that I was 20.
Yes. What's Steph saying? I don't know when rush hour started.
I don't know when rush hour started at 3 p.m., but apparently that's the world we live in now. And then it started. I can join in as soon as I get home. What do you think, Nick? You want to start, or you want to wait for Steph to join? Or
well, I always like having Steph on board, but it depends how long we're going to have to wait.
It's really up to you because I don't have anything planned for the rest of the day. So,
well, why don't we give 20 minutes or so?
Okay. Yeah.
And he and I can just gabble, and then she won't miss too much.
That's right.
because I haven't got too much tomorrow, but I have got a fairly early dentist appointment, and then I have to come out of there and beat feet for Gatwick to see my cardiologist, and then I have to come back and do a bit more study because I've got simulator.
Oh,
So
again?
Still, yeah. And well, we do our main one, and it alternates each year. That's the 2-day session. Alternates each year between the 3:30 and the 3:40. But regardless, we still have to do one session on the aircraft we didn't do the main session on.
Oh, okay.
To get qualified on both of them. But so I've got the 3:40 on Saturday. It's a late evening one, so it will be like 8 to midnight, and followed by debrief and things. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Oh, I just realized I did not play the very end of your. I didn't do a special version of.
I left you a reasonable gap, so if you just wait till bensounds.com is spoken, you'll have like 5 seconds at least to fade.
Okay. And then, yeah, so when I'm playing it in Evernote, I really can't fade it, but I'll just make I'll just make a hard stop. And then when I'm editing in Audition, then I'll do a nice
all right
fade out.
Or you could just let it, for the video.
Or I could just let it go. Yeah. True. And then when I'm editing, I just edit that part out, which is probably just the easiest thing to do. That's what we'll do.
There you go.
I'll just know to keep my trap shut until it's all finished.
There's plenty of what is it when the disc jockeys have a record that has a sort of false ending? There's a nickname for it. I don't know. I can't think what it is now, but I've heard it in the past. There's plenty of those on this because I put a lot of music and sound effects in between the individual stories, because I had no idea that there had been so many airplanes, particularly military planes, stolen.
This is really an interesting one.
Really? There's a lot of these.
It was I got through about 2/3 of it, and then something happened. Like, I don't know, I had other things to do, so I was hoping to finish the whole thing, and so that I could go and take a break when we're playing it. But
well,
I'll take a little break at the front end of it, and then I'll come back and listen to
the part
that I haven't heard. Let me make sure it's a good volume level.
The old pilot's playing tails. Another of our aircraft is missing.
How's that volume?
That sounds great. I've often wondered why it's so easy. If anything, it's a little loud.
Okay.
Just a trifle.
All right. Let's see. You're getting the audio from here. This is an experiment here. I'm going to go ahead and lower the volume a little bit more, and then see if you can hear it at all, to see if I'm understanding the way this is all working.
To start up an aircraft, it seems that the more expensive,
did it fade out?
Dangerous. No, it's gone down to a mute, but there's a little pussycat going without a key, security code, or some other way to ensure that the voice phone is authorized to do so. There is a little purring in the background.
What's that?
There's a little purring. That's gone now. There was a little bit of background of fuzzy noise. It sounded like a cat purring.
No cats down here, so it couldn't have been from me.
No cool cats. You're a very cool cat, Jeff.
There's some cats upstairs.
There it is again.
You hear it? Did you hear like a meow, meow, like a cat meowing?
No, it comes in conjunction with your voice.
Ah, okay.
So it's like there's a little cat purring in the background every time you speak.
Huh. Okay, the gate is off.
Can anyone in the chat room hear it? You need to speak, Jeff.
Okay, hello, testing 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5. It may be just some of the background, although it's pretty quiet.
No, it's sort of it comes in just as you start speaking, and then when you stop speaking, it just gently fades away.
Huh.
Ah, Richard hears it. Yes, purring.
Hello, kitty cat. Oh, well. Hopefully you all can put up with that. Let me go back to...
Sounds like you have a little vibrato.
Ooh,
The wings for the wings of a dove.
Well, I have no idea where that is coming from. How is my volume compared to Nick's? Are we all balanced pretty well?
Better burn out than
Sounds
fade
like
away.
crickets. Purring. Is this the first time that anybody's heard purring?
Yeah, I first time I've heard anything like it.
Okay. Look there. Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
Yeah, it stopped when you muted.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only in accompaniment with your audio.
Yeah, so it's like my voice is opening up a gate, although I neither have a software gate nor a hardware gate engaged.
That's fascinating. Good job. We've got 20 minutes to sort it out.
I'm going to turn the... Okay, now I'm going to turn on the noise gate. And I'm going to start talking, and then the gate opens up, but you'll probably hear that sound you're referring to when I'm talking.
Not so bad now.
Okay. Now that's the...
You know, it's still there. Still there.
Okay, that's the hardware gate. Now I'm going to turn that gate off, and I'm going to use the software gate. And now the software gate is on.
You have to say something reasonably loud and then just stop abruptly.
Okay, I'm going to say something reasonably loud.
Again?
Loud.
Can't hear it now.
Oh, I just needed to clean out the pipes.
By the way, I see you've gone back to the nice pop filter rather than your usual.
Yeah, what I need to do is my model of the pop filter has a screw, so I have to like carry around a little screwdriver with me, and I need to take this to Home Depot or one of our hardware places and find like, what do you call it, wing nut, like as you have on yours, so that I can take it on and off, and I can travel with it. Uh-oh. You there? Oh, no. Hello? Oh, boy. Hello? So is it me or is it Nick? I have a feeling it's me. Hello. Chat room. Is Nick frozen or... Yeah, Nick's gone. Okay. I thought it was me. I guess that's the name of the show, huh, Rich? Purring Jeff. I really don't know how to fix the purring. All right, Nick is finally off of the Hangout screen. Yeah. All right, well, really haven't done anything differently than I normally do, so I'm not sure. It must be the Hangout on air that's causing the purring sound, I would imagine. Let me see if I can check my settings, see if I can adjust anything. iMic audio system, iMic audio system, Logitech webcam C930E. I'm going to switch to studio mode, see if that helps. Okay. Nick just texted me. Internet down. I'll reset. You and I both cannot hear the purring. Oh, okay. Why is it that some people can hear purring and others cannot? Yes, I have. It's to answer your question regarding the screwdriver. It is a Phillips head screwdriver. Louder. Extremely loud now. Oh. Okay. Well, then let me go back to the other mode. I'm in studio mode now, so let me go back to voice mode. Okay, now I'm in voice mode again. Wonder if it has something to do with one of the sound inputs. Output device. Hello, hello. Bad XLR cable. Let me disconnect. Fan? No, there's no fan. Absolutely none of my devices are hot enough to have a fan running. I mean, it's eerily quiet in here when I take my earbuds out. I can hear outside, I can hear the air conditioning compressor running, but I don't think it would be very, very difficult for you to hear that. I can barely hear it. Yeah, so I don't know. Sorry about that. But, let me do this. Let me record and see if it's going through the recording at all. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello. Test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. Test out. Now I'm going to go back here and hit play. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello. Test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. Test out. I don't hear any purring or any noise at all. Hey, Jen. Nick is, you're not going to believe this, but technical issues. Nick is experiencing internet issues. Steph is not quite home yet. And, but I did. The important thing is I started the stream exactly at 4 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. So I do get credit for that. I'm not sure what that credit's worth, but what are you saying, Ivor? Apart from you, Jeff. Hello, hello. Can't hear the purring now. Huh. The cat is gone. Wow. Okay. Well, that's good. I guess Nick is... Nev. Cut it out. Oh, and by the way, I am in your bedroom. Surprise. Just kidding. Please say hello to Sue for us. Hi, Sue. Oh, I can say hello myself if she can hear me. Hello, Sue. What does she call us? Aviation weirdos are in the house. It only happens when the gate is open. Yeah, well, the funny thing is, Nev, right now I do not have a gate engaged. No gate. No software gate and no hardware gate, and it's just acting as if there is one, but there isn't. Trust me. I'm looking at all the devices. Here, I'll even show you. See, that's the control for the channel. It says Jeff, and then it says gate up there. The gate is not on. Hey, by the way, maybe I can do this. I was going to save it for the show, but maybe I'll do it now while we're just like wasting time and waiting for things to sort themselves out. And I got a package today. An unboxing. Okay. And so here we go. I've already kind of cut through the tape. And there's a red folder with some kind of an image on it. I don't know what company that is. Oh, well, look at this. Oh, an Apple logo. Scissors. Isn't this exciting? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Hope that wasn't breakable. This is a USB charging cord by Anchor. iPad Pro. Wait a minute. It feels very light. I'm confused. It's got all the stuff in the box. But there's no iPad Pro in here. Wait a minute. What is going on? The company that makes the mounting cover. I'm hoping and praying that the iPad is in this. Yes, it is. Ta-da! iPad Pro. The new EFB. By the way, I'm using the Surface 3 EFB as my digital mixer control display. So I may just end up, I think the company is charging us $175 if we want to buy the Surface, and I might just do that because I can just use that as a dedicated control head for my mixer. And I can use it as a Windows machine because there's some Windows software that I use for bidding. I've been using emulation on my Macs to do the Windows software for bidding, but it might be nice just to have a dedicated Windows machine. Yeah, so this is okay, let me show you. This is the new setup, the iPad Pro with the pivot case. And this is the pivot case for the Surface 3, which is just big and ugly and bulky. And this is much nicer. It's lighter. It's a harder material. And now one thing it doesn't have is it doesn't have the iPad Pro, that it did not give us the smart keyboard with it. And somebody told me that the union has has gone to the company and said, according to our contract, if we have an EFB device, it has to have a keyboard. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get a smart keyboard eventually. And they're not cheap. They're $160 US, $159 to get the smart keyboard for this device. Yay! Very nice. Can't wait to set it up and use it on my next trip. Okay, well, anything else to open? No. Wish I had a beer to. I do have one beer that I can open. I keep hearing noises. It's a breakfast stout from Founders, and I'm going to go and get that and open it up during Plane Tales.
The GA aircraft that's the old pilot's playing tails. Another of our aircraft is. I've often wondered why it's so easy to start up an aircraft. It seems that the more expensive or potentially.
Okay. You know, the Surface 3, I took it out of that pivot case, is much more slim. And
I'm back.
Oh, hey, welcome back. Oh, look at that. And Steph comes on almost simultaneously.
Good timing.
Wow.
I know.
Good
I was like,
job.
crap, I'm late. And then Nick's like, my internet's not working.
No, you're not late as me. Well, I've been here once.
Yes. Well,
So you missed my unboxing.
What did you unbox? Oh, your new EFB.
Yeah, my new iPad
fancy.
Pro.
Very nice.
Yeah.
A Pro. Oh, excellent.
Why are my headphones all staticky? Why?
You plugged them
Don't
in
know.
the mains?
I haven't changed anything from last week. Nothing.
Oh, dear.
Because that's what happens with audio.
Oh,
It
Is
just, yeah, it just does weird, strange things on its own. Just ask Nev; he'll confirm it. Matt
Nev,
Smith.
Well,
Nev's the one that creates most of the strange things.
I was going to say, I was
just so
going
he
to
can
blame
make
this
a living.
problem on both of them.
Yeah, I would blame Matt Smith and Neville Bounds for all of your audio issues.
Why is that all?
I do.
Hold on.
Well, we're here.
We are.
Woohoo. I've got my clacker ready.
So you just lost
Liz,
internet.
my cleaning lady was here on Monday, so maybe that's what happened.
Oh, was she listening to podcasts?
I have no idea. I'm not here when they're here.
The router's in an odd spot because we're decorating the room that it's in. That's going to be the new studio. And I think the position I picked wasn't ideal. But I shouldn't have lost it that badly. It just died. But anyway.
Didn't that happen the other week too?
Yeah, it did.
Maybe time for a new router.
Well, the company, they supply it. So that I'd have to prove there's a fault with it before they come out and do it again.
Well, we'll be your witnesses.
Thanks. Hey, I like you. You got your cat back. Although I'm not going to say anything because I want to get the show going.
Okay. Well, it's funny because when you were gone, several of the people in the chat room said it was gone.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what's going on. Do you hear purring from me, Steph?
No, I just hear static in my left ear.
Okay.
Okay.
That's nice. Start the recorders.
Yeah, hold
Yeah,
on. I'm
recorder's running.
Getting there. Why did that shut down?
Why ask why?
Something strange happened while I was away from my computer over the past few days. Okay, recording.
Do you need to grab a beer or anything?
I got one. That was the first thing I did.
Okay.
You guys were not the priority. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Why? Yeah, I believe that's perfectly true.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Don't install new audio hijack. No. Okay.
What?
It was trying to install a new version of audio hijack after I already hit record.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on. It's gremlins of some sort, as far as I can tell. And we'll just see what happens.
Okay. Are we ready? Okay.
Yep.
Ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Although Nick is in October, apparently.
Is he?
No.
Yes.
That's the proper way of writing them. Who would put the month ahead of the day and then follow it by the year? That just is completely illogical.
Because we say it is May 10th, 2018.
Which is also completely illogical.
Nah.
You follow by the small units, then go to the medium-sized units, then go to the big units, growing in
Hey,
size.
look, our calendar is not metric. Okay, we don't do the
That's
metric
right.
calendar.
Yeah.
We do the
Non-metric calendar.
non-metric calendar. I guess we need to move to 10 months out of the year instead of 12. Is that the way we're going to run this whole thing?
Yeah. Liz is the producer, and she agrees with me.
Well,
Yeah, the Canadians are wrong too.
I'm the head host of this whole thing, so I say we do month, day, year.
Very sensible.
Although I get confused when Liz does the posts, and she'll put like May 10/18, and I think it was like one time we did it on the 17th, and I'm thinking May 17/18. She thinks it's going to go that long. It is a long show, but anyway. Okay. Ken Hayes. Okay, I guess we're just going to have.
Love it, Liz.
some kind
No
of an
show
argument.
notes for you, Steph.
It's all right. I don't read them anymore.
Yeah, sure, won't make any.
I'm just going to keep digging my hole deeper and deeper.
All right. Let's see here. Let me get over here to the intro page and.
Chris, you can get this T-shirt from my wife. She bought it for me for a present. I think it's from probably the RAF Benevolent Fund or something online, I suspect.
Okay.
WAPG
323. Here we go. Oh, and by the way, Dana gets confused by this every single time because it's Google Hangouts on Air, YouTube live streaming. The way it's set up, it doesn't know exactly what to do in this mode, the voice mode, when it hears the music in the background and then it hears my voice, and it doesn't know exactly how to sort all that out. So it kind of muffles my voice. So I think what I'll do is I'll try to turn some of the volumes down a little bit. And then when I do the audio editing, I'll just pump everything back up where it should be. But that's what's happening. Nothing is wrong with the equipment. It's just the way that Hangouts on Air works. And again, as we like to remind everybody, we're doing an audio show, not a video show. So here we go.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 323.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from the APG headquarters studio in a northern Atlanta suburb. Today's show was recorded on May the 10th, 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Get your ride and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, vintage airplane makes a successful dead stick landing on a UK beach, raccoons in the ductwork, more news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, another of our aircraft is missing. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat racks in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 323 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we cover news and, most importantly, answer your fantastic feedback. I'm a captain for a major U.S. legacy airline in the States based in Atlanta, and joining me today to help me with all of this from her beautiful lakeside cottage in South Carolina, Doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Hi, Captain Nick. We'll say hi to you in a second, I guess. But I don't know how much help I'll be, but thank you for thinking that I might provide some assistance today.
Well, I hope you will. What the heck do we have you here for?
I don't know. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great show, 323. Let's get started.
Let's do that. And also attempting to help us from his country estate outside of London, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, and now captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
A man who sets his attainment levels very low and continually fails to achieve them.
I like that.
Are you referring to Jeff?
No, I'm referring to me.
Well, I think it applies in both cases.
Great.
All
to be
around,
back
I
on the
think.
show. This is the aviation podcast that does not take itself too seriously, but we do have fun, that's for sure. We hope that we entertain you and possibly even inform you and educate and all that jazz. So how have you all been?
I've been good, but I just realized that I was going to catch you up on some stuff, but I was going to grab something that I was going to review, and I left it in my car. So I can run and grab that real quick.
Well, why don't you do that? And then
start with Nick. And
no, what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking that we'll do the whole thing, like the clacker and everything else, over again.
Because you didn't record.
Classic.
Very. All right. Well, hold that thought.
No, I'm looking over there now, and it's recording.
Yeah. How many seconds has it been recording for?
About 10 seconds.
All that thing about where you said recorders going earlier, you didn't start yours. Well, I started mine.
I mean, I asked if yours were going. So I did check to make sure that mine was going.
All right.
Oh, dear.
Give me 30 seconds.
Okay.
To run out of my car. Be right back.
I suppose you'll be very quick because she doesn't have any doors in her car. So
that's true.
How do you stop things getting pinched?
Oh, okay. See, you use that word for in a different way than we do, and I was thinking of getting pinched.
Well, it also means that.
I know, but I understand now what you mean. Like, how do you keep things from being stolen? I guess you don't leave anything inside the car. I always laughed at my son because we'll go someplace and he's driving my Jeep Wrangler, and he locks everything. He locks the doors. And I'm thinking, why bother? I mean, all you have to do is unzip everything, and you can get right on in. I don't know.
I guess it's a deterrent.
I guess
it's like stealing military airplanes, as we'll discover. Easier than you think.
A good tease there for plain tales.
There you go. Okay, I'll get 323 again. And it was one of my best clacks ever.
I know, it was awfully good. I was going to definitely compliment you on that. So there was the music a little bit lower volume for the intro.
Sounded good. Yeah, okay. I thought it sounded good.
So Captain Nick was wondering how you prevent getting pinched when you're in your Jeep with the doors. Wait a minute. What did you say?
Huh?
Things getting pinched. How do you stop things from being stolen? Pinched.
You don't leave anything in the vehicle.
There you go.
Okay, and it wouldn't work for me, you see.
Do you still lock your car though?
Would I walk away from it? Yes,
Yeah.
Because it arms the alarm.
Oh, okay. All right. Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Sorry, I said I wasn't ready.
Oh,
It's fine.
I thought.
No, I did. It's just going to be slightly behind yours.
Okay, we'll do it one more time. Ready?
Oh, okay.
3, 2, 1. Yay!
Better.
Okay,
Hooray!
let's do this again. Oh, now it's really low. Can you guys even hear that?
Just.
No.
Yeah, I could barely hear it. Okay, let me try that again. This soundboard, it just automatically adjusts the volumes on its own. It's like has its own mind.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 323.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from the APG headquarters studio in a northern Atlanta suburb. Today's show was recorded on 10 May 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. It's your ride and it's flying by with the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's show, vintage airplane makes successful dead stick landing on a UK beach. Raccoons in the ductwork. More news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale. Another of our aircraft is missing. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 323 is ready for pushback. Hello and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast, and I am a captain for a major U.S. legacy airline based in Atlanta, Georgia. And joining me today from her beautiful lakeside cottage in South Carolina, Doctor, Sky Doctor, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. So nice to be back here with you today, and Captain Nick, and really looking forward to a great show. 323.
Awesome to see you, and also joining us from his country estate outside of London, professional photographer, former RAF fighter pilot, and now captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Hello there, Jeff. Hi, Steph. I prefer stately country. Sounds quite nice. But I noticed we're setting our achievement levels as low as usual and again failing to hit them.
That's what it's all about at the APG.
I was asked for help today to provide assistance, and I feel like I've already failed in the very short time we've been together today. So I told you weren't going to get much help from me today, Captain Jeff, and proof is in the pudding there. Sorry.
Well, we here set the bar kind of low, about halfway up the, 50% is what we're always shooting for. And, sometimes we attain that.
Sometimes.
Not very often, but we certainly try. And we have a lot of fun attempting it anyway.
Indeed.
Oh, so how has everything been with you, Dr. Steph?
Oh, everything has been very good. Thank you for asking. It's been a very, very nice week here in South Carolina. Had a chance to do a little bit of flying on Monday. And actually, it really wasn't me flying. I had a good friend of mine who was taking his instrument check ride yesterday, and he passed. So congratulations to him. And
wait, just to make sure that he didn't pass away, but he passed the check ride.
Passed the check ride.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Just want to make sure.
All happy news here. But he wanted to go out and practice some approaches earlier this week before his check ride. So I went and did a little flying with him and was the safety pilot. So he was, under the hood the whole time, behind the foggles, looking at everything inside the cockpit there, doing his approaches. Everything looked great. I did my best to try and distract him on occasion, which I was successful at once, but it wasn't really the intention. But anyway, it gave me a good chance to try out the device that Sean gave you, correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
ADS-B receiver.
Oh, look at that. If you're watching the video.
If you're watching the video, this is it. So
Very cool.
Yeah, these are the ones he builds with the basically off-the-shelf components. Most people will, or most pilots anyway, might be familiar with the Stratus, which is the commercially available one, which is kind of a smaller device, probably, I don't know if you're watching the video, yay big. That's hopeful for our audio listeners, but
How big's
Yay
a yay?
yay.
Yay!
Not very large. I mean, probably the size of one of these power bank battery packs, like what's attached here. But also, it's a pretty pricey device. So this one is actually much more cost efficient. And I had a chance to try it out. It uses, I think, open source software and then available off the shelf hardware components and antenna. And I followed the instructions that came in the box with it. I powered it on, and it has its own, local Wi-Fi signal or signal that it emits. So you connect your Wi-Fi on your device. And in my case, I use an iPad mini, which I have here, and it comes up right away, and you connect to that, and then it pretty much seamlessly integrates with ForeFlight, which was really nice. So then when you pull up your maps on ForeFlight, all of a sudden you have traffic. So all traffic, commercial traffic, anyone that's got ADS-B out, including we were doing some approaches here in Rock Hill, which is the airport closest to me. And there was a student, I think she was a student pilot in the pattern based on the way she was doing her pattern work.
Let's hope, right?
I'm taking a guess there. But, she was making a lot of radio calls. We were not always sure that she was hearing our radio calls. We'll just say that. But it was nice because then I could see her on the map. And it was very helpful in finding her quickly in the traffic pattern as we were coming in on our practice ILS approaches. And it worked really nice. So, so far, all positive reviews. It connected seamlessly, and it was very straightforward. The suction cups on the back here stick really nicely to the window of a Cessna 172, and the signal was good. So
excellent.
compared with what I've seen, I've seen the Stratus in action. I don't own one. The smaller, more readily available, I guess, commercial device.
But more expensive.
More expensive commercial device, because I guess these are available commercially now, I should say. And it seems to do the exact same job as those do for
excellent.
A fraction of the cost.
Well,
So
when Sean sent it to me, I put it together. Not that it required really much putting together at all.
I can show the people watching the video what it requires putting together. It comes with so the antenna came separate, so you have to screw in the antenna, and they're specific. You have to connect the correct antenna to the correct side, but they're labeled, so it tells you which one to do. There's a 1090 and a 978, and I'm assuming that I watched the video on his website, and I think it refers to the frequencies that they're receiving. So those just have to be on the correct side. Everything else is already basically assembled in this unit. You can stick I think the suction cup apparatus is separate, but that just slides on. And then there's a separate power bank. And it actually has let's see if I can put this in the video there. The output is right here. So as you connect or if you have the power bank strapped on the back of the unit, then you just
plug it in,
and it powers up. And there's a little Velcro strap to hold it together, and that's it. So,
yeah. When I was putting it together here at this desk, obviously I wasn't in an airplane, and I used some kind of actually I was using accessing the unit from a web page because it was connected via Wi-Fi, and so you can see all the stats, and you can see all the different satellites it can see, and that kind of thing. And even here inside my basement, it was picking up ADS-B information from several Delta Airlines flights flying overhead.
Yep.
So that was kind of cool.
It works really well. I guess he wants us to give out all this information, I'm sure. So
Crew Dog Electronics.
CrewDogElectronics.com. And this is the Stratux, STRATUX ADS-B dual band receiver. So
yeah.
If you're interested, I like I said, I've tested it the one time so far. I plan to try it out a few more times, but I was very impressed with how it works so far.
Excellent.
Would you fork out for one if you needed to, Steph?
Oh, absolutely. I've been actually planning to get an ADS-B receiver for quite some time. And this one is substantially more economical than some of the other available products. So I'd be very happy to purchase this.
We should also add that it is a attitude heading reference system as well.
Yes. I didn't use any of that actual function. Mostly because it was.
We always say AHARS because we like to make different words out of a bunch of different words. So, But and that's not just aviation. I guess a lot of industries do the same thing. Anyway,
medicine.
It basically provides you information about, it's like almost like an inertial platform or a gyro, where it'll show you, your wings level and if your pitch is up or down or whatever. So it's pretty cool.
Yep. I haven't used that function of it yet, but I'll definitely check that out the next time I take it up.
All right.
What does it actually use to generate that? I mean, does it can't have gyros in it? So
no, it doesn't have gyros, but it has like accelerometers and I'm not sure exactly how that works. But
yeah, I'll have to do some research on
like
that.
Your phone, like your iPhone, it knows, I'm holding it this way or that way.
Yeah, well, that's reliant on gravity, so that's not exactly ideal for an airplane.
Well, I don't know, Nick.
I was just curious.
Ask Sean.
Because you can induce 1G wherever you are.
Yeah.
Sure. I was going to add something to that, and now I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, fine. Well, if you remember, just
I'll let you know.
Chime in. Yeah, the full setup is somewhere around $230, $250 US.
$229.99, I think it was.
Oh, that does sound reasonable. Yeah,
very reasonable. So.
All right. And so you did your flying, and how's work? Everything cool at work?
It's just busy as usual.
Yeah.
So
okay,
we're victims of our own success at this point in time, I think, which is a good thing, but it just seems like you never get a break anymore.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll get one soon, Steph.
Yes, I will. Vacation is coming up.
Excellent. Captain Nick.
Yes, sir.
How have you been this previous week?
I have been tickety-boo, thank you very much. The weather has been beautiful. A lot of sunshine. I've been out with my camera, just getting my hand back in because the dog shooting season is coming up. Sorry, I should rephrase that. The dog photography season.
Oh, okay.
I thought maybe you were going to use your dogs for hunting or something, like not hunt the dogs, but hunt with the dogs. That's what dog shooting season means here.
Not really
but
sure.
Photography also, sure.
When I have more spare time, I'm definitely going to expand that part of my little business and go out and follow hunts, shoots, and because that kind of photography is also very interesting. At the moment, I'm just taking individual commissions from people, but I've got one. I'm just waiting to find a suitable date, and I'll go and do that. And of course, been setting up our little meetup for the 22nd of this month. So this is the RAF, the May Museum meetup, the RAF Museum at Hendon. We're having a get together there on Tuesday the 22nd, so not that far away. I'm going to plan to be there at about 10:30 in the morning. The museum opens at 10 and closes at 6 in the evening. I'll be there between about 10:30 and 3:30. So if you want to catch us and the other APGers that are coming together to wander around the museum together, then that's the time to look for. I'm going to be kicking around just inside the main entrance, which is the area called Milestones, just behind the arena and car park 2. And we'll just meander around together, I think. After that, we're obviously going to stop at some point in the cafe for lunch. So I'm there plenty of time. If you can't make the morning, come for the afternoon. If you can't make the afternoon, come for the morning. And brilliant if you could do the whole day. It would be fabulous. The museum doesn't charge to enter. There is a small fee if you want to park your car, somewhere between £3 and £4, depending on how long you want to park for. So fingers crossed it's all going to be a nice day. It looks like we're going to have a number of people there. I hope it doesn't get too big, because if it's over 10, I'm supposed to tell the museum we're bringing a large party. So I'll pretend that we're less than 10. So anyway, Nev's going to come with some audio visual gear. So everyone dress up nice and smart.
All right.
What was the date on that one more time? Just
22nd of this month.
22nd. Okay.
May the 22nd. Tuesday, May the 22nd, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So that's it for me. Tomorrow I've got more medical stuff. On Saturday I'm doing a 340 simulator, just a single session to update my 340 rating. And then it's back to kicking my heels, waiting for the time to elapse so that I can start flying again.
Very good.
Yeah.
I was just, while you were talking about the meetup, I'm thinking, let's see, have I had any meetups? I just got back from a 4-day trip, which was a wonderful trip, by the way. The first day was the longest day. We went up from Atlanta to Hartford, Connecticut, Springfield, Massachusetts, then back to Atlanta, and then back up to Bradley International up there. And so it was kind of a long day of flying, about roughly 6 hours of flying total. And then the next day, one short leg under 2 hours to Detroit. The following day, one leg, about 2 hours from Detroit back to Bradley International. And then one leg home today, about 2 hours back to Atlanta. And the co-pilot and I were saying to each other, wow, wouldn't it be nice if we flew these kind of trips every week? And I said, yes, it would be very nice. Anyway, I was thinking about the fact that you were talking about an upcoming meetup, Captain Nick, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I did have a meetup on Tuesday. Got a text from the other Captain Jeff, the good-looking one, and he said, hey, I noticed that you were going to be in at Bradley International. He said, I got a layover there as well, and I get in about 7 o'clock, and let's, have a beer or have dinner or whatever. I thought that's a great idea. So Jeff did join me at the Sheraton Hotel in the actual Bradley International Terminal. I did actually take my Zoom recorder with me. Now, I did not prepare for me to play this, and so I've just connected the recorder to an input into my mixer, and I'm hoping that this is going to play for you. I bet it won't, though. Here, let me play it. Can you hear that?
No.
No.
Okay. It's because I have to do some routing changes. Hey, what if I do this?
No, Windsor locks. Windsor locks.
It doesn't sound very good, but I'll put in the real audio.
Yes, you can edit this all in post.
Yeah. Okay, let me.
Yeah, except he won't, Steph, will he?
No, I will.
Does.
This is going to sound horrible.
Fun of it. It's fun when I say that, and then he clearly doesn't.
Well, but mostly I do, but sometimes I don't. Okay.
Hey, folks, in Bradley, Windsor locks. That's one of those old things that you really don't run into anymore, because now everybody has these electronic flight bags, and so it's just easy to figure out, how to get the airport diagram and the approach plates and everything else for Bradley International, which is in Windsor Locks, Connecticut, serving Hartford, Connecticut, Springfield, Massachusetts, and surrounding communities. Anyway, I'm here, and I got a text from Jeff, the good-looking one, Captain Jeff, and he said, hey, I noticed you're going to be at Bradley, and he said, I'm staying near the airport. And I said, I'm staying in the airport at the Sheraton. He goes, okay, well, then let's do dinner. And I said, okay. So here we are, actually in my room. So, he came in deadheaded in from Chicago, and he's in uniform, and, he tries not to drink too much beer in uniform, and said, come up to the room. Take your uniform shirt off, put your bags here, let's go downstairs, grab a bite to eat and a beer. And that's what we did. And we just came back up here. He's now back in his uniform, grabbing his bag. He's going to head over to his nearby hotel, a DoubleTree here. And but it was so nice that Jeff happened to catch the fact that I was here at Bradley overnight. And so we just had a great time. We've been talking all kinds of good stuff.
It's always been fun to get together with Jeff, and this was absolutely pure dumb luck that we got to do this. And we had the same thing for dinner. We both had lobster rolls. Imagine that. Different beers, but lobster rolls. And it was just good catching up. I haven't seen Jeff in a while. Last time I saw him was down in Atlanta. And just, you sign up for Where's Captain Jeff, and he pops up every once in a while on your Twitter feed, and there we are. So for the BFFs, there's pictures there. Jen's happy now. There's both of us. So
yeah, I hope you're happy. But we had a grand time. We both have, as mentioned, very early flights in the morning. I think mine's an hour before his, but at least I'm here at the airport, so I don't feel too bad. And just wanted to do that, to just do a quick meetup audio, and that's it. So until next time, Adios.
Tailwinds and clear skies for everybody.
Bye-bye.
There you go. Sounds so professional.
Yes, excellent audio quality.
Very good indeed.
Now, if you're listening to the audio version of the show, which is most of you, it'll sound nice and clear and not very tinny like those of us on video right now heard it. But anyway. All right. And that's pretty much it with me. Just got home from my trip today, earlier today, and scheduled to go back out on Monday for another 4-day. Unfortunately, it's not quite as nice as the trip that I just returned from, which I returned, but it's not bad. So got the weekend off.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we should do before we head over to the coffee fund?
I'll just wish Dana the best because his foot's still giving him trouble, I gather. So fingers crossed you get better soon, Dana.
Yeah, we're good thoughts coming your way, Dana.
Medication is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Oh, and I just realized we do have something else here before we move to the coffee fund. This from Grant. He says, "Hi, everyone. I'll be in Rome for work from the morning of the 3rd of June to about midday on the 8th of June. I'll have time to catch up on Sunday the 3rd and Monday the 4th. Then we'll be buried in the work event on Tuesday and Wednesday, including the obligatory dinner event on the Tuesday. Thursday the 7th should have some time in the afternoon, evening, once some meetings finish. Then Friday is heading to the airport from about 8 o'clock in the morning. Are any of you or your audience likely to be in Rome around this time for a catch-up? Matt and Owen from PTUK will be catching up on the Monday and then hanging around until the Wednesday. Note, I'm not on Slack and barely have time to check Facebook every other day or so. Thus, emails or WhatsApp. And he put a number in here, so I'm assuming that we can put that in the show notes. If you want to contact Grant and anyway, he said those are the best ways to contact me. Do you have any recommendations for letting people know regarding a possible meetup that doesn't involve me joining Slack for one post in there? Okay, so I guess that was kind of an internal note to us. No, I think the best way would be to contact Grant via email, which we'll put in the show notes, and we'll put the WhatsApp number. I guess that's what he wants us to do, right?
Maybe check with him before you do that. Just
I better do that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you're in Rome, Jenny, check it out. Meet up with Grant. All right. That does it, I think, in our intro portion. And now I think time for me to try to push the right button.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the driver and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
All right, we play the Java Jive. This was recorded by the Jeff Smith because it's our way of talking about your way to support the show financially, called the Coffee Fund. And you can learn about how to join the Coffee Fund cadre by heading over to the airlinepilotguy.com website. And since the last episode, we've had a few folks join us on the cadre, or in the cadre, using the Classic Fund. Mazuz Karim, Aaron Kiefer, Jeff and Anissa Moeller, and Stephen Abru. And then the other way to do it is via Patreon. You can become a patron of the show. We have a new producer, Francois Schott, and a new executive producer, Dennis Schubert. So welcome new patrons. Thank you everyone for contributing to the Coffee Fund. And again, information about how you can join the group by heading over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. We thank you so much. That's not the right one.
Stand by for news.
Hey, I just noticed, Stephen, how do I pronounce that? Is it Abru, Hamburg?
Yeah, right. Stephen.
Maybe spell that out phonetically for me, Stephen. The newest producer is in our chat room.
Alpha, Bravo, Romeo, Echo.
He must get a lot of jokes about coffee.
Or beer.
Like coffee. A
or
brew.
beer. Yeah.
There's
Like coffee. A brew. Okay. Stephen, a brew. Excellent. Okay. Now, back to the show. Let's start off with this item. And by the way, the news folder is very scantily loaded with news this week, which is
That's all right.
Kind of nice, actually.
Sometimes in aviation, no news is good news.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think all this news is pretty good. Well, at first, this didn't start off to be a good thing. There was a gentleman and passenger, Zach Rocky, 47 from Exeter, was flying his vintage aircraft. And, I was never able to find out, and I wasn't able to identify the airplane based on the pictures and the video. But it looks like a World War I vintage aircraft. Do you recognize what that is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a Moraine Saulnier MS-315. So it's 1932, a French military trainer.
Now, did you get that by just looking at that, or did you find that somewhere else?
Jeff, you have little faith.
Okay.
The registration's on there, but I can Google search it.
No, I did a little bit of undercover work. I discovered that this gentleman, Zach, works for AT Aviation. And if you go on their website, you can find a description of Zach, because he trained as a traditional tool maker and subsequently developed his skills into the aviation world. Zach is a highly experienced vintage tailwheel pilot and can often be seen flying our 1932 MS-315, not the easiest aircraft in the world to fly, ! There you go.
And it didn't even sound like you were reading that.
Not at all. That was just from memory. He learned it and knew it.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Not the easiest aircraft in the world to fly, but for a forest landing, he made it look pretty darn good.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were flying around, and the engine started sputtering, and then it just stopped. And they were out over the water, and he spotted a place to put it down on this it looks like a rocky beach. Sidmouth Beach at Jacob's Ladder. I have no idea what any of that means. But put the thing down.
Devon.
Huh?
Devon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know.
Found several places on YouTube with actual different, several people had their phones ready to videotape, or not tape, make a video of this guy coming in his vintage aircraft, and did a really nice job of landing it on this beach. And I don't even think it got a scratch, or if it did, it would be a very minor scratch. And they ended up, because it would have been a risky and I don't know, an interesting thing to try to fly that thing out of there, and because it's not the best landing strip, they decided to dismantle the aircraft, take the wings off and such, and cart it out of there, I guess. So
yeah, I think it's a pretty sensible idea, quite honestly. Although I think a bit of a trog up the cliffs to get it onto the nearest road, but perhaps that's why it's called Jacob's Ladder. I suspect that's the sort of name of the bay that this rather stony beach is in.
Yeah, so I was, I when I watched the first video of it, it was like really a tiny little speck in the background, and you could see this little thing lighting on the beach. And then I found another couple of videos, which I'll put in the show notes for you, that you can watch. And one of the videos was like the people were right there. In fact, the thing almost went right over their heads as they were walking down the beach. I guess this is a dog walking beach. But anywho, interesting story and a happy outcome.
Yeah, he'd been off to try and apparently sell the aircraft at a sort of a display or a gathering of like aircraft, but he hadn't managed to sell it. So he was on his way back home. I think it's probably a good job the prospective buyer
did not purchase.
yeah, etc. On his first flight.
Yeah, better.
First flight, you're gonna have an engine failure and have to land.
And I did notice that this AT Aviation website that Zach, the company that Zach goes with, they sell a lot of aircraft, and they've got quite a list. And I noticed that this aircraft is no longer on the list of machines for sale. So.
They have to fix it first, I guess.
Yeah, I guess they do.
All right, excellent. Second item in our news folder. An Air Canada flight is delayed by a raccoon. An Air Canada flight in Saskatoon was delayed due to an unwanted furry passenger on Thursday. Oh, how rude. A raccoon.
Those raccoons, they just have
I
no
thought you
manners.
were supposed to wear these things on your head. Like a
Only
hat.
if you're like, what was his name?
Davy Crockett.
David
Davy
Crockett. Yeah, David Crockett.
You know, for years when I was a kid, I thought he had 3 ears.
What, the tail was an ear?
No, because it was there was a TV series. I remember Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. I always thought he must have an ear on his forehead.
If you don't know what a frontier is, then
As a small children may not know what frontiers are.
Davy Crockett. Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
I'm not familiar.
Yeah. Well, it's before your time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you'd have to be our age.
Yeah. Anyway, a raccoon was seeking some cool comfort inside the hose of an air conditioning unit when his slumber was interrupted by the unit being attached to the plane.
How rude.
From there, the raccoon ran into the air duct system of the plane, delaying the flight several hours. Passengers, luckily, it was still alive, so it would have been a
They
bad
don't have
thing,
a raccoon-proof grill.
Seems like it'd be an easy thing to install. I don't know.
Yeah.
Passengers initially realized something was wrong when a group of flight staff and an animal control unit were gathered outside the plane. Damian Lee, a passenger on the flight from Saskatoon to Toronto, said the flight had 2 delays. The first one was due to baggage, and that was announced, so people understood it was a regular delay. With the second one, it took about an hour for them to actually announce what was going on. I guess they didn't want to scare everybody on the airplane. Let's see. The flight was supposed to leave at 2:50 p.m., but didn't take off until 10 p.m. Most passengers thought that the whole incident was funny rather than frustrating. There were probably 2 or 3 people that were upset, like cussing and saying they'll never fly again. But for the most part, people just thought it was a funny thing and dealt with it. Passengers were given food vouchers and were offered a discounted rate on a future flight. No hard feelings were had against the airline. Another quote, "I respect the effort Air Canada crew is putting into finding this raccoon." In an email from Air Canada, a representative said, "We understand that the raccoon ran off after exiting the duct system, presumably back to the safety of the wilderness where he belongs. Hopefully, the raccoon has learned a lesson about places that are not suitable for taking naps."
Yeah. Teach a lesson to those raccoons.
Yeah. Always a moral to the story, right?
Yeah. Either that or turn them into hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the latter.
Yeah. All right. That is it. Believe it or not, we're already finished with the news. That means we're going to be able to tackle more of your feedback.
Woo-hoo.
Liz, get ready to add some more stuff in that feedback folder. I have
Not just yet. Just make sure that we.
Yeah, well, just think about it anyway.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I'll play this one for a second time on today's show.
Stand by for news.
Nope, not that one. This one.
Captain, incoming message.
All righty.
What a bunch of professionals we are.
Yes, we are. Yeah, it's like I've just started doing this podcast thing like a couple weeks ago.
How many years now?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
2009.
Huh.
Okay. Ralph sent in some feedback. He said, "I'd love to hear your input on this event." What event, Ralph?
As passengers got off Southwest Flight 3461 Saturday afternoon, many, like Marie Wary, are thankful just to be back on solid ground.
It just felt like I was about to lift off. I felt like, okay, it's done. I'm about to see Jesus. I'm about to go see Mama, baby Jesus. I'm about to see Papa God. And then we're going to go see...
You actually thought that you were going to die? Yes! It all happened as the flight, flying from Fort Lauderdale, was trying to land at Armstrong International. You can see in this flight map, the airport was located in the thick of the storm. WWL's Lauren Bale was on the flight.
And we came through the clouds, and the plane was just tilting back and forth, and it was going all over the place. People were screaming, people were crying.
But then, through the thunder and the lightning, the pilot pulled up and circled, eventually making it safely out of the storm, landing in Panama City.
The pilot was amazing. He was very calm. He reassured us that he got this. Thunder, lightning, you couldn't see anything. There was no visibility. And right as we were about to land, he pulled right back up and went right back out.
After a short stay on the ground, the flight made it back safely around 2:30. We reached out to Southwest to see why the flight wasn't canceled to begin with. They just said safety is the company's top priority. An unusual flight for sure.
Oh, for sure. I haven't experienced anything like that in a long time.
Paul Dudley, Eyewitness News.
I wonder how we ended up hearing about this story.
Well, the airline is reaching out to customers on the flight, and Southwest has apologized. Right now, they say they're gathering reports from the flight and that they will be reaching out to all ticket holders.
There was a journalist on board.
That's WWL's Lauren Bale was on the flight.
Yes. So good.
Ding, ding, ding,
Yep.
ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Do I win a prize?
Yes, you do.
Okay, good.
You get to be more. You get to do more hosting on the Airline Pilot Guy show. Yay!
Excellent.
Way to go, Steph.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah. So, what do we think about this, Ralph Walker? Well, I would imagine that maybe not quite as bad as this, but this sort of thing probably happens a lot. Where we are dispatched to fly somewhere and you end up getting into some unstable conditions. It's kind of unfair, I think, to show, as I mentioned here in this coverage, the FlightAware display of the aircraft's path and then the superimposed weather, because I think FlightAware has to kind of do an average of where the weather is during that entire flight. So I don't know exactly where the storm system was when the pilots attempted to land at New Orleans, but obviously it was they gave it a shot and decided it was too unsafe to try to do it again. So they did the right thing, diverted to their alternate, refueled, and then let the weather subside a little bit and then make another attempt. Now, some of you may ask, why the heck, wouldn't you just cancel the flight or just stay at the origin airport longer and wait for the weather to pass? Well, not sure how it works in the UK and in Europe, but for a large scheduled airline like Southwest or Delta or Acme, we launch flights intending to land at the destination, but then we add enough fuel to hold to allow for weather situations, and then we also add fuel for an alternate destination if one's needed, and just going out there with that effort to make it to where the people want to go, because they bought tickets to go from wherever they started to New Orleans. Forgot already where this was going.
New Orleans. They stopped in Panama City.
Not sure exactly where it started though, but anyway.
Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, Lauderdale. Okay. And that's just the nature of this business. We just go off. We intend to make an effort to get you to where you want to go, and even knowing that the weather, unless it's extremely, unlikely that you're not going to make it in, the airline is going to make an attempt and then analyze the situation when they're closer to the airport. And maybe some people might say, perhaps in this case, they shouldn't have even attempted an approach and a landing at the airport during the time. But sometimes things really are dynamic, and we're not sure how quickly things are moving and whether or not you're going to have a window of opportunity or not. And I can guarantee you, even though the passengers felt like this was like they were close to crashing, I think as one or more of the passengers said, that it was not quite as bad as they thought it was. I don't know. What are your feelings about this, crew?
No, I feel the same way as you, Jeff. Especially for passengers who are not pilots or who have difficulty with being in situations where they're not in control of the situation. Anything that feels outside of that realm of control can feel very intimidating and scary, and like you're not going to be able to survive the event. So I can certainly understand and appreciate their perspective, but I don't think any professional airline crew would attempt an approach if they didn't think it was safe in the first place. So there was some reason why they thought it was safe to attempt it in the first place, and it turned out that it wasn't suitable for landing, and they did what they were supposed to do and went back to holding and diverted and stopped for some fuel and then completed the journey. So kind of a non-event, but reporter on the airline. So
we'll often look at a forecast, and assuming the forecast isn't blatantly outside the aircraft's limits, we'll launch, because frequently the forecast is the actual weather is not as bad as forecast, and we get in without any problems. Or you might hold for half an hour and the weather moves through, and then you get in and the flight's done, and everyone gets where they want to be. If you cancel early and the weather doesn't arrive, then everyone goes, oh, what a useless damned airline. So you can't win either way sometimes. You leave it up to the crew to assess the situation. And they obviously thought it was safe to make an attempt, and then they thought the appropriate thing was to divert. But quite honestly, there's very little drama attached to these sort of events in the cockpit. All the drama is happening with the journalists in the back.
That's right.
And speaking of weather, I just noticed it was suddenly not bright sunshine outside my window anymore. So I pulled up the weather radar here, and it looks like we have a little bit of
look at that
fun stuff coming this way in the next probably half hour or so.
Oh, I hope it doesn't take out your electricity and your internet.
I hope not. It doesn't look that serious.
Yeah.
But if I disappear suddenly, that's why.
Oh, no.
Ah.
Okay. Well, Ralph, there you have it. We weren't there, so, we're not really sure exactly what the situation looked like, but I have a feeling that the passengers may have exaggerated a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. Liz, you ever heard of her? Our producer?
Yes. She does a wonderful job. Thank you, Liz.
Lovely Liz.
We love you.
And yes, we do. And she very carefully and smartly placed this next piece of feedback in there, because it sort of relates to the one we just covered, talking about weather and closing airports or not going to the destination or whatever. And well, let me just read this. Probably be best that way. This is from the New York Times. Airlines will be prohibited from sending planes to Kennedy Airport during winter storms like the one that caused chaos there in January, unless they have received assurances that gates will be available on landing. The change is one of several the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey plans to announce on Monday to prevent a recurrence of the epic runway traffic jam that left hundreds of travelers stranded on planes for hours during the first weekend of 2018. The agency also will require better management of luggage at Kennedy after some travelers did not get their bags back for several days following the storm, nicknamed a bomb cyclone by meteorologists, that dropped several inches of snow on Queens. The announcement of the new procedures by the Port Authority, which operates the three big airports that serve New York City, comes about a month before the results of an investigation into the causes of the chaos at Kennedy are due. Ray LaHood, a former federal transportation secretary, is expected to release a report in May that will detail the breakdowns in operations at Kennedy and prescribe improvements. Rick Cotton, the executive director of the Port Authority, said the agency would not wait for Mr. LaHood's report to assert more control over the companies. Wait a minute. Let me reread that. Rick Cotton, the executive director of the Port Authority, said the agency would not wait for Mr. LaHood's report to assert more control over the companies that operate the 6 passenger terminals at Kennedy. Unlike operators of some other big United States airports, such as Boston Logan International, the Port Authority had ceded much of the responsibility for loading and unloading planes to the private operators of Kennedy's terminals. The proposed changes represent a much stronger hand on the part of the airport in terms of setting operating standards. He said that the Port Authority would make a stronger commitment to articulating performance standards and to enforcing them. The new rule on flights bound for Kennedy when a winter storm is forecast is an unusual restriction, the airline industry official said. The managers at Kennedy may recommend the cancellation of flights scheduled to arrive when storm conditions are predicted to be severe. If an airline decides to launch a flight anyway, it will have to obtain an assurance from a terminal operator that a gate will be available when the plane touches down. That is a departure from standard practices, said Perry Flint, a spokesman for the International Air Transport Association, which represents airlines. In Europe, he said, airlines are required to have a landing slot, but not necessarily a gate reserved at destination airports. Mr. Cotton said he was not aware of another airport requiring prior assurance that a gate would be available. That restriction is appropriate at Kennedy, he said, because so much of its traffic is long-haul flights from overseas. The need for it became apparent after Kennedy was overwhelmed in January with more planes arriving than some terminals could handle. In normal conditions, terminal operators and their airline tenants managed to get planes in and out of gates fast enough to keep up with the inbound traffic. But in the days after the snowstorm that swept up the East Coast on the 4th of January, frozen equipment and staffing shortages slowed operations and left some planes parked for hours without gate assignments. In some cases, the Port Authority had to send staircases and buses to rescue passengers from stranded planes. So it goes on in this article to talk about all this stuff. And again, the link will be in the show notes. But what do you think about this, Captain Nick? Because you're one of those long-haul pilots that end up flying in and out of John F. Kennedy International quite a bit.
I've no idea how they're going to make it work, Jeff. It just doesn't make sense because we launch 6 or 7 hours before our arrival time. How can you have a guarantee that there will be a gate available? Because if in their minds they're thinking, right, well, we'll have this gate 5 Alpha for the Acme Red flight, and when you get there, the aircraft that was supposed to vacate is unserviceable, stuck there, or they haven't been able to sweep the taxiways clear of snow, so it's stuck there, or the pilot's sick, the passenger's lost, something. You can never guarantee that aircraft are going to move away from gates on time and make a gate available for you. All you can do is trust that the flow rate will be suitable to give you a gate. Now, if there is no gate when we get there, then you obviously you can't park. Now, what you might need is more remote parking and better busing, so that that's in there as a backup. But I mean, Kennedy always seems to have a problem with this, which is why frequently you come off your gate and made to join a whole queue of aircraft because there's no gate holding, because in other words, you're not required to stay on your gate until there's no queue to take off, because those gates there's so few gates that it's essential that you vacate the gate. I've been known to join a queue of 50 or 60 aircraft queuing for takeoff, and we're all there running our engines because we've had to get off our gates to let other aircraft occupy them. So, JFK is an airport that is, like some others, straining at the seams. They want more and more aircraft in there to generate income, but they don't seem to have the room to accommodate them.
Now you need more gates, more terminals, more gates, and that is expensive.
Yep.
And airplanes, 50, 60 in a queue running those engines is not.
We're going green.
Going green. If you ask me.
Going green.
Nope.
We're gonna take care of the earth.
Not taking care of our earth.
No, it's certainly not, and it's costing the airlines a lot of money as well. And I feel sorry for the passengers when you say, right, well, this is a 6-hour flight. We'll get you in at such and such in the morning. And then you spend an hour taxiing out. Mm-hmm. You're already late before you've even thought of taking out.
I didn't see anywhere in the article about, if there were going to be fines or penalties if, the airlines, to send an airplane, even if they don't have an assurance or a guarantee that a gate's going to be open.
I don't know. All sounds like something that's been plucked out of nowhere, this concept, without really putting a full amount of thought behind it.
Trust us, we're we're changing things, and this will never ever happen again.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something that came from an administrative level and not necessarily on a practical level.
Yeah.
Not that administrators can't be practical, but I see it frequently where people without, their hands in the day-to-day operations of things decide on policy, and it doesn't always make sense. So,
but I tell you, we make a big effort at Acme flying into Atlanta to, ensure that we follow restrictions as far as, not sometimes, we'll hold a flight at our origin for a while because the gate space is not going to be available when we arrive, or we may actually not have as much headwind as we thought, or have more tailwind, or whatever.
It probably makes more sense from an airline operational point of view than from the actual airport point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But that requires individual airline buy-in.
And last year we had a couple examples of situations like the power that got cut off because of the underground fire, where we had many airplanes and lots of passengers out there, and they couldn't get them off the airplanes right away because there were no gates, because they couldn't push the airplanes off the gates. It was just a big mess. Thankfully, I didn't get to participate in that. As he smiles.
Woohoo.
Yeah. But it was a mess. Anyway, well, we'll just hope for the best, JFK, and we'll see if that works. We talked on an earlier episode about Uber for airplanes and how that was something that was kind of included in one of the latest funding bills for the Federal Aviation Administration, I believe. And we were discussing that a bit. And Sean Hempel sent us some audio feedback regarding perhaps a different point of view.
Hello, APG crew. Sean from Portland, Oregon here. Private pilot, longtime listener, and first-time feeder backer. Just a quick thought on the recent discussion in episode 321 about Uber for airplanes. The proposed amendment was quickly abandoned and not included in the final text of the House-passed version of the FAA reauthorization bill. I agree that the proposal, which would have dropped the requirement for private pilots to cover their pro rata share of expenses, was ill-conceived and short-sighted. However, I do think the notion of allowing pilots to announce their intentions to fly a trip and accept passengers to help cover a portion of the costs of that trip should be reconsidered. Pro rata cost sharing is one of the few ways aspiring airline pilots can offset the oppressive cost of obtaining the required 1,500 hours of flight time. The FAA already allows for semi-public requests for passengers or fellow pilots to join me on a flight. I do it currently when I volunteer to fly animal rescues. If another pilot wants to join me, we'll split the cost and, if possible, split the legs. Or, at the local FBO, I can post a trip on the physical bulletin board asking if anyone is looking for a ride to one of our nearby destinations. The technology gap is that currently I can't publish that same message on a ride-sharing app and accept a cost-sharing passenger that way. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe the only difference in insurance liability between posting in an app and posting on a physical bulletin board would be to the company that makes the app. My liability as a pilot remains the same. If I take a passenger and am in compliance with all applicable regulations and insurance requirements, I'm covered under my owned aircraft or renter's insurance policy. My thinking is, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater on this one. Pro rata cost sharing is perfectly legal and can be a terrific way to help pilots gain valuable flight hours at reduced expense. Any private pilot will be well versed in what they can and can't accept. I personally have had to hand cash back to friends who offered me money for fuel after a local sightseeing flight. The rules are quite clear, and if not followed, the consequences sufficiently severe to discourage any rational pilot from trying to illegally act like a for-profit operation. So while the proposed amendment had major issues, I'm not sure it was entirely without merit. I would suggest that as a flying community, we consider whether there may be ways in which technology can be utilized to help pilots reduce the cost of gaining valuable flight experience without creating an additional or undue risk to the flying public. Thank you, love your show, and keep up the great work.
thank you, Sean, for that different point of view. And you make some very good points there. What do you think, Steph?
So yeah, the pro rata sharing is perfectly legal, perfectly fine. There is a caveat in the FARs that says that in order for you to be able to participate in pro rata sharing. So, I mean, just for example, what does that mean? Say you're the pilot, you have two friends who want to go with you on a flight. You have to pay no less than your pro rata share of the flight. So you have to divide that 3 ways, and you have to pay, 1 cent more than that 1/3 cost of the flight if you're the pilot, basically. And that, those costs can go towards fuel, they can go towards maintenance costs, airport expenditures, oil, things like that. So anything that you're directly paying for that flight. So if you don't own the plane, you're not paying for maintenance and such, so you can't collect fees for that. But you can split the gas, basically. It doesn't apply if you don't have a common purpose for the flight. So the example is, say you're going on a trip to go to a wedding that you're the pilot, you're going on a trip to attend a wedding of a personal friend, and you have a friend who wants to join you for the wedding. Great. You're going there for a common purpose. No problem at all. Your friend pays a pro rata share to enjoy the flight with you. And then that's that. It's different if your friend approaches you and says, hey, I need to go to my friend's wedding. Can you take me there? That doesn't fall under the category of having a common purpose, because you as the pilot did not have that goal in mind in the first place. So you have to be a little bit careful. You have to be careful how those flights are approached where you're sharing costs, because you can't, as a private pilot, you can't act as you can't hold your shingle out there and say, yes, I can take whoever wants to go to point A, B, or C for a cost to wherever they want to go. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Train of thought. So let's say I want to fly my private airplane to a place and to catch a football game, let's say. And you somehow find out, Steph, that I'm heading up there in my private airplane, and you are going to be the maid of honor for a wedding in the same city,
the same place.
Is that considered a common?
That's considered a common purpose, as far as I understand it. You're both going to the same place for a reason.
Doesn't necessarily have to be the same reason.
It's not that I approached you in the first place and said, hey, and then you were like,
I could go up there and catch a football game. Yeah, I see.
That's different.
It's kind of a
it gets a little gray, but you really want to be able to make sure that you can justify the reason for the flight for you as the pilot in the first place, if you're a private pilot.
And Sean, big thumbs up for you, being honest when your passengers tried to, pay you for giving them the sightseeing tour. And you said,
yeah. And I think almost every private pilot has had that experience too. It's like, hey, I want to go flying. Like, do you guys want to come with me? Or, they want to go for a sightseeing flight and you want to go fly. So that's common purpose. If you want to go fly and they want to go fly, that's not a big deal. You can have that common purpose. But then you still have to pay your pro rata share, which is at least the amount divisible by however many passengers you have.
Okay.
If not more. So.
Yeah, the problem I see with having people pay to go fly with you is that the whole purpose of building up these hours is to get the experience and ability so that you can be trusted to take a fare paying passenger.
Mm-hmm.
If you take fare paying passengers in order to become experienced enough to take fare paying passengers, that defies logic. That doesn't work in my book. So I don't see a problem if you're qualified to fly with a passenger and they want to share the cost of the flight. I don't see a problem with that. When you start actually doing it solely for the purpose of making money,
exactly,
so that you can then generate the hours to become a person who can legally fly passengers around, that's when it becomes a problem for me.
Yeah, I think that's where the line is. Yeah. Okay. Well, very good. Thank you, Sean, from Oregon, for sending in that audio feedback. Very, very nice. Thank you. Sealview sent us some feedback. Hello, APG crew and community. Sealview here. I've been listening to the latest episodes and absolutely enjoyed the show with the old pilot's plain tales. And then he made a suggestion for Captain Nick, perhaps, on a future Plane Tales. He said Sophia is a flying telescope on a NASA 747. I think it would make for an interesting episode.
I've done. I would be doing Marcus a disservice if I did this, because Marcus of Omega Tau, I think he did 3 entire installments when he actually flew on the Sophia 747.
It's like over 7 hours worth.
Wee bit longer than the PT.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's
that's
excellent.
right.
If you're interested at all in Sophia, I would highly recommend it. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, it is very good, and I would feel like I was treading on his toes, which I wouldn't like to do.
Yeah, Omega Tau podcast, Marcus. Yeah. Great stuff. Maybe you already listened to his show, but if not, Silvio, you need to check it out. He goes on, also for your listeners who are very busy with their lives and want to make it easier to study the material, I found the full audio recording for the FAA Pilot's Operating Handbook and some other material on LibriVox.org, which are recorded and on public domain. Just search for FAA as author. And so I did that, and I just found a little excerpt of something if you want to hear the quality of these things, which I was very impressed by. And this is from the preface of the Pilot's Knowledge something or other.
The Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge provides basic knowledge that is
the Pilot's Handbook of Basic Aeronautical Knowledge. That's it.
Essential for pilots. This handbook introduces pilots to the broad spectrum of knowledge that will be needed as they progress in their pilot training. Except for the Code of Federal Regulations pertinent to civil aviation, most of the knowledge areas applicable to pilot certification are presented. This handbook is useful to beginning pilots as well as those pursuing more advanced pilot certificates. Occasionally, the word must or similar language.
Anyway, so you get the idea. Very high quality recording, at least in this case, the one that I selected, and they break it down into chapters and everything else. So it's a very useful thing, and it's all free. It's public domain. So very good advice, or what's the word I'm looking for? Good tip for those of you out there who want to gain some aeronautical knowledge and perhaps are driving or doing something where they can't read the stuff, but they can listen to podcasts. So we'll put a link to the link that he left us in his feedback on the show notes. I do want to ask Dr. Steph and Captain Dana about some GA aircraft that take off while being highly overweight and usually end up in a crash. My almost 10 hours of experience tell me that's one of the worst decisions a pilot can do. And he goes on to say, the chain of events as seen by me goes as such. First, the aircraft can barely climb out of the ground effect and be at the stall limit. Second, engine is run at full power. Third, since altitude is really hard to gain, training it for turns might not be an option. Plus, it can be even more difficult to control. Fourth, obstacles are extremely hard to clear. And fifth, the engine will overheat inevitably. And if there's no place to land, they're out of luck. I would appreciate your input and comments on general aviation aircraft leaving overweight. No, landing overweight. Departing.
I think he's talking about departing.
Taking off overweight. Okay. Thanks as always. Tailwinds, unlimited visibility, an autopilot that never lets you down when you need it, endless IPAs for the crew, and rivers of bourbon for Dana. Ciao. All right. Thank you, Silvio. So Dana's not with us today, but Dr. Steph, perhaps you can shed some light on his question.
Yeah, don't do it. It doesn't end well. I mean, for any aircraft you're flying, you need to know the weight and balance data. And if you're outside of those data, then it is not safe for you to go flying. It's as simple as that, because all of the things that Silvio listed could potentially happen if you're trying to take off with an overweight or out of balance aircraft. So.
And same thing goes for the kind of airplanes that Nick and I fly as well.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely don't want to.
All airplanes.
Yeah, all airplanes.
Yes, I think the first aircraft crash I saw was a rather underpowered, very basic trainer with an extremely large passenger and instructor who were going off for a trial flight. And they took off on a wind that was slightly downwind on a slightly uphill runway. And when they got to the end of the runway, they didn't have enough height or speed to clear the trees and stall into the trees at the end. So it's exactly the situation you're describing there, Sylvia.
Ran out of ideas and airspeed, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or airspeed.
Not a good place to be, right?
No.
All right. Well, Sylvia, thanks again for the tips and great question. Knick Knack Jack, he sent us some audio feedback. We played the second part or the second item of audio feedback on the last episode because it pertained to the Southwest 1380 accident. And I told you we would play the first part of his audio in this episode. So here we go. Take it away.
Hey, Captain Jeff, Dr. Steph, Captain Dana, and Nick. Captain Nick, this is Knick Knack Jack here, and I am flying the Benliner across the Pacific, somewhere over the South Pacific, en route from Melbourne to San Francisco. Flying the Dash 8. I actually had a Crash 8 the other day. It was very unfortunate coming into Singapore, and the airplane just wouldn't climb. It was a problem. So the safety statistics of Travel World Airlines have gone down, unfortunately. Very sad to report that. But I'm enjoying the Benliner, and I thought I'd check in. I've been really behind on podcasts, so I'm trying to catch up. But still enjoyed the show. Hopefully you're amused by my tales and not too distracted by the cat in the background. So keep up the good show. Hope to hear from you guys as you continue to produce episodes and keep me entertained on these long trans-Pacific flights. And till next time, keep flying. Keep the blue side up. Bye.
Somehow, Knick Knack Jack miraculously survived that Dash 8 crash. 787.
As did the aircraft, because he was flying it again 5 minutes later.
The joys of simulator flying, right?
Exactly.
Do over. Yeah. New day, new airplane.
Yep. Press the reset button.
I love it. Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff.
I'm just curious to know what kind of engines he's got in his Benliner.
It must not be the Rolls Royce, right?
No, perhaps not. Well, I don't know. He crashed, so it might.
Oh, maybe it was.
Yeah.
Maybe it was, yeah.
Anyway, thanks again, Knick Knack Jack. Steve sent in, Steve Horn, the guy that does those wonderful How I Got Here installments, sent in this. And he sent a link to some video. A flight instructor was flying along with a student, and a surprise occurred. And Steve, his email to us says, some poo came out.
Yes, I understand the sentiment, the emotion.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Steve.
Anyway. I'm waiting for Dr. Steph to explain what physiological effect occurred there.
It's probably related to the fight or flight response.
If you watch this video, trust me, you'll understand
why.
The description of the video, heart-stopping footage has emerged showing the moment a flight instructor narrowly avoids a mid-air collision with a private jet west of Eastbourne, UK. Footage captured on March 7th shows the small plane veering to the right in order to avoid the oncoming jet, which appeared out of nowhere. And I was reading somewhere else, and I don't recall where. I think it was one of our community members actually said that they did some research on this, and I guess the people flying the private jet never ever saw this trainer aircraft, and it was close. You really should watch, as most people would say, not a near miss, but a near hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a board of inquiry, so I got a lot of technical assistance from the guys at Farnborough when we were coming up with our findings, which involved a mid-air collision. And of course, if you're actually going to collide with someone, they have to be on a constant bearing. So they are relatively stationary compared in your windshield, because if they start moving, across your windshield, they're either going to go to one side of you or another, perhaps above or perhaps below. So they'd be absolutely stationary. And your eyes aren't really designed to pick up things that are stationary. We're hunters, basically, and we very easily pick up things that move relative to us. We zero in on those very easily. So it's quite hard to see an aircraft that is on a collision path with you, because it won't have any relative movement to you until it physically starts to blossom, grow in size, and that is usually extremely late in the scheme of things. So when it does start to grow fast, you have to react very quickly. And it looks like this bloke did a good job. I suspect that the other aircraft was sitting there with probably a newspaper stuck in the windshield. I don't know.
Probably, there was a glare coming from the sun, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's
yes,
fine.
Yes.
Yeah. And you'll see in this video how, it just, yes.
With your Stratix ADS-B,
yeah,
you can have that traffic information.
Yeah.
It does give you an alert, an auditory alert on your, if you have it set up that way on your ForeFlight, it'll say traffic. Oh, and I did think of the one thing that I was going to say about it earlier just now. And I've seen this with other ADS-B receivers as well, that sometimes it identifies your own aircraft and tries to tell you that you all of a sudden have another aircraft in conflict right at your exact same altitude and going the exact same direction at the same speed. But it's easy to identify that as such, because it usually, at least in the instances I've seen it, it happens when there's clearly not going to be any other traffic right at that spot, like right after you've taken off, and it suddenly identifies your signal. For whatever reason, it can recognize both. And I've seen that with other receivers as well. So it's not unique to this one, but it was an interesting thing to note. It gets your attention a little bit because it goes, traffic.
Yes.
Even in the systems that we use, the TCAS systems, occasionally, they're supposed to suppress returns or alerts for aircraft that are on the ground. But occasionally you'll get a spurious, traffic call out or whatever, and you kind of, what, where, it gets your attention. So, the software does a pretty good job of eliminating those kind of nuisance warnings, but occasionally it does occur. All right. Usually it's when you're coming in for a landing and somebody on the ground is about to take off or whatever.
Still helpful for those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you watch this video, you'll see that even when you're staring and you know exactly where to be looking for this, because I watched it several times, you don't see it until the very last minute. And so this guy's very, very quick reaction saved probably a lot of lives.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I had my attention divided a little bit, and I was like, oh, let's see what this is. And I missed it completely until he had already maneuvered out of the way, and I never saw the other aircraft. So it gets your attention.
When you're looking out into a clear area of sky, it's very hard to keep your eyes focused at infinity, which is where they need to be focused to see. Your eyes will naturally start focusing in because they've got nothing to actually focus on until you find yourself staring at a scratch on the canopy. And at that point, you've really got to force yourself to look back out, pick a cloud in the distance or an object on the ground that's some distance away, look at that for a second, and then bring your eyes up to the range and bearing where you expect to see it, so that your eyes are going to actually focus on him.
And your comment earlier, Nick, about if an object you're on basically a bearing to intersect with the other object, potentially hit the other object, is something that is a danger when you're not trying to get close to another object. But conversely, when you're learning how to fly in formation and you're doing turning rejoins, that's exactly what we're teaching our students to do. Like if that object stays in the same relative position, but grows a little bit larger as you get closer, then you're on the right line during this turning rejoin to
that's exactly right. Same principle as when you're working out where your landing point will be on a runway. So the point of the runway that isn't moving relative to you is where your impact point is going to be. If that starts rising up or going down in the canopy, then you're either going to over or undershoot it. So same principle applies.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Thank you, Steve, for sending that in. Sorry about the physiological incident.
A little unfortunate, and maybe too much information, but we can understand.
Maybe.
Yeah. We know who to send the bill to, do we?
Brian, sent us in some questions. Pasadena Brian, who is also the associate producer of the wonderful Airplane Geeks podcast.
And helped me out on my plane tail the other day.
All right. Yeah, that's right. I thought I recognized that voice.
There you go.
See if you recognize this one. Here we go.
Hi, Captain Jeff and crew. This is Pasadena Brian, and I have some feedback and a question for you. Captain Nick, sorry we couldn't catch up at Heathrow when I was in town. Hope all worked out with you and your physical. Just wondering, can you talk a little bit about your airline's physical requirements or how the annuals work?
I thought I'd just stop it right there. We'll take each question as it comes.
Well, I just need a standard CAA Class 1 medical, Brian. So that's the company's requirement. When you first join, you have to pass a company medical in as well. But I've never ever seen a published standard. So I think that's done on a case-by-case basis. I was pretty fit when I joined the airline, but I'm a bit older now. So the company is not actually interested. They're willing to pick up the bills for anything extra you need to do. So if you need an extra test or something in order to pass your Class 1 medical, they're willing to pay for that. But it's up to you to deal with your aeromedical advisor, pass the test, and if you do have some additional medical problem that might require some other expert advice, then you have to go across and find an expert, get them to give an opinion. That's sent to the CAA. They decide whether they will accept it or not, and assuming they do, then that's fine and beaut. And the basic requirements, well, they're probably too big to list. I just present my pink and hairy body to my examiner, and he just prods and pokes it. I do undergo regular hearing tests, sight tests, ECGs, blood tests, and a few other bits and bobs to get through just a standard medical. And it was annual, and now I'm over 60. It is now twice yearly, so every 6 months. That's the basis. So I think there's an awful lot of information on the CAA website if you're interested. I'm sure Dr. Steph knows a bit more.
So you only have to go annually until you reach 60?
Yes, that's right. It used to be, I think it's 60. Pretty sure it's 60.
Yeah, for us, it's basically when you have a type rating, I think, or maybe it's when you become a captain or a certain age.
Class 1 medical, you need to go every 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months.
Class 2 medical is every year, and Class 3 is every 5.
So when I was a first officer, it was only once a year, and you go and get your Class 1, but it would revert to or notch down to the Class 2 after the 6 month point. That was all that was required as a second in command, or maybe it was because there was no type rating. Because we started requiring type ratings for both pilot in command and second in command at Acme several years back. So now I think it's every 6 months for everybody now.
You can be sitting in the right-hand seat without a type rating?
You used to be able to.
Right. And I don't know if that was a change by the FAA or if it was a company internal change. But yeah, I didn't have a type rating until I checked out as captain.
Good Lord. Okay.
That's not possible anymore.
Isn't it? Okay. Well, yeah, especially after the Colgan thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we went under the UK rules. I think we were annual up to 50, and then or 55, and then 6 monthly. When we went to EASA, because we had to combine with so many other countries, and some of whom had extremely relaxed rules, they sort of picked a midway path. So it's now annual till 60 and then 6 monthly. That's EASA. But we've always required a type rating for both of our pilots, or all of the pilots on the aircraft.
And it really was just, what's the word? I can tell I got up really early this morning because of my vocabulary is lacking. It was just an extra little bit that you'd have to do to get the type rating when you went to your next simulator check ride as a second in command to get the type rating. a part oral examination and some other items in the simulator that you had to accomplish, which I can't remember right offhand, but it was it didn't take long. It was pretty much everything you were going to do anyway. And so the company decided we might as well have everybody in the cockpit with a type rating. So, but it's a different. It wasn't like a full pilot and command type rating. It's kind of hard to. It's like a special category of type ratings. But again, that was all before this latest requirement that now everybody has to have a type rating to get hired by a Part 121 carrier. So, I guess it's kind of a moot point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. Brian has a question for somebody else. Let's see who it is.
Let's work. Captain Nick, as sad as I was not being able to see you, I was able to see Dr. Steph. So Dr. Steph, it was great seeing you at the United Club at Heathrow. Sorry we couldn't meet in Hamburg, but oh well, you were probably tired from running the marathon anyway. But really, thank you so much for walking through the terminal, all those miles to get from one terminal to the other. Really appreciate spending time with you. Captain Jeff, on my flight back from Heathrow, I was trying to get caught up on your never-ending podcast, and several times during the flight, I laughed out loud. I had my earbuds in, and no one could tell I was listening to a podcast. So there I was, laughing hysterically from time to time at the show, and everyone thought I was crazy. Oh well, it happens.
You are, Brian. You are crazy.
Well,
Tony,
to listen to this
Dana, or whatever your name is. I guess now it's Captain Dana. Congratulations on moving to the left seat. Here's a question for you. With the upcoming retirement of the Mad Dog, why did you choose to move to the left seat versus some other aircraft? Was it even an option for you to move to another aircraft? If it was an option for you to move to another aircraft, which would it be? Or if it wasn't an option for you, when the Mad Dog is finally retired, what aircraft would you like to move over to? And will you move over as a captain now that you're a captain, or will you have to go back to being a first officer? Just wondering. Hope.
Dana, can you answer that question for Dana? Oh, that's right. He's not with us. Let's see. Let's let Brian finish.
All's well with everyone. Keep up the great shows, and look forward to listening to future episodes of Airline Pilot Guy. This is Pasadena Brian. Fly safely.
Thank you, Pasadena Brian. I guess it wasn't a question for everyone, but unfortunately, the question for Dana will not be answered in this episode, but perhaps next time Dana will be with us, and we'll go ahead and throw this back into the next episode feedback folder, and then I'll just play that last part for Dana, because those are good questions, Pasadena Brian, and I think I could answer them, but it wouldn't be right from me because you specifically asked Dana. So, yeah. So always good to hear from you. And again, Brian Coleman, Pasadena Brian, we know him over here at the APG. He's the associate producer at the Airplane Geeks. That's airplanegeeks.com. All right. Stephen and John both sent us feedback regarding this incident. And this is an interesting one. Perhaps I should play this. No, that's not. I was hoping that.
It's not what I was thinking you were going to play, but interesting.
But, I'm thinking, well, I must have set it up so if I just hit the B key, it would play that, but apparently not. So let me see if I can find it. Oh, I was just playing it earlier today. Dang it. All right, here we go. Bad girls. Okay. So, Stephen writes, hey, y'all. Not sure if anyone else saw this, but another great United Airlines story. Okay, it's a regional airline for United, but still a good story. Thanks, Stephen. And again, John sent this as well. United Airlines is investigating claims that a flight attendant on one of its planes, one of its regional affiliates actually, was belligerently drunk or stoned during a flight from Denver, Colorado to Williston, North Dakota on Thursday. I kind of highlighted stoned and Denver in our show notes because isn't it Colorado, one of the states that has legalized
Indeed.
The use of marijuana. Now, I'm not saying that this is what happened in this case, but if you look at the picture,
it's a strange coincidence in any case.
So, in a statement at Newsweek, the airline said it was aware of the incident. The flight in question was a Trans-State Airlines flight. Yay for mentioning that. Whoever, Newsweek, I think, did this, yeah. As a gesture of goodwill, we have compensated all customers aboard the flight. We apologize for any inconvenience or distress this may have caused, United said in a statement to Newsweek. The safety of our customers and crew aboard all United and Trans-States flights is a top priority. Well, what happened here? Well, at least one passenger tweeted to United about the incident. According to passenger Erica Gorman, the attendant appeared either drunk or stoned and made what was supposed to be a routine flight terrifying. Gorman said she spoke to the pilot and told him that they had an out-of-control flight attendant. At one point, the flight attendant allegedly told passengers, quote, "If your seatbelt isn't tight, you effed up." Police officers and an ambulance were waiting when the plane landed at its destination, according to Gorman. The passenger also tweeted images of the suspected flight attendant, which have since been deleted. United Airlines quickly responded to the passenger and said it was looking into the disturbing claims. And there was some more information there as well. I wonder how she says the passenger notified the pilot. I wonder how she did that. Kind of curious.
Yeah.
Maybe after they landed? No, it sounds like they already had an idea that
maybe when they got on the plane in the first place.
Maybe.
Before.
I hope not.
There was some picture, or maybe it was a video. I think it must have been a picture, or maybe it was a picture of a video where the flight attendant in the allegedly drunk/stoned flight attendant was getting into one of the passengers' faces. I mean, literally like inches away and screaming at him about something. And they all kind of suspected that something wasn't quite right.
What medical conditions can you have, Steph, that can bring on these kind of symptoms?
Well, intoxication
yeah.
is one. You could
one
also
that might not be self-induced.
There's probably a lot, actually. We certainly talk about hypoxia sometimes is causing these types of problems. Which one are you thinking of in particular? I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't know. I think there might have been something with blood sugars that.
Blood sugars could cause it. I mean, like I said, there's probably a whole list of things that could cause this, but certainly the most common are, shall we say, non-intrinsic to the body.
Okay.
Causes.
Fair enough.
I'd say psychosis, maybe.
Psychosis. So, like I said, there's certainly, you could put them under the category of psychological disturbances. You could put it under the category of metabolic disturbances. So anything that's upsetting blood chemistry, brain chemistry. There's a lot of reasons, but certainly you would think that if the flight attendant or any employee who showed up to work acting in this manner might have been stopped from performing their duties before it got to this point, I would think. So I'm not sure how she managed to be on the flight in the first place.
Yeah. I guess in a situation when you have a regional jet that's 50 seats or fewer here in the U.S., when only one flight attendant is required, you can almost see the situation where perhaps the pilots never really get a chance to interact with the flight attendant, although they would have had to have done some kind of a face-to-face briefing. But perhaps she didn't act strangely when that occurred, and perhaps it went undetected until maybe they were on their way. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll find out anymore.
Probably not. That would be my guess.
Well, either way, no matter what the cause, sounds like she got some medical attention and hopefully has recovered from whatever condition, whether biological or otherwise, was causing her unusual behavior.
Right. Okay. Paul, our good friend Paul at Newark Liberty International Airport, was also a mechanic, an A&P mechanic. And we were talking about the engine examinations, inspections of the CFM 56. And as a addition to his audio feedback regarding that, he sent in a couple of photos of one of their CFM 56 post inspections, where you can see the dovetail and the dovetail slot where the blades install, and the primary focus of the failure of the fan blade on Southwest 1380. And so we'll put those in the show notes if you're curious. Great photos of the fan section of the CFM 56, and a nice close-up of the ring where those fan blades are inserted into that dovetail slot.
It's an interesting one because they look like there's not a very tight fit for those blades, which is in fact the case, because when these blades are cold, there's a bit of breeze blowing through the engine and the fan is gently rotating. The blades tinkle as they move slightly, and the weight moves them in that dovetail joint. And that's, of course, there on purpose, because as the blades heat up, when the engine is running, then they tighten into their slots, and they're fine. The bird strike I had quite early on in my career during my initial base training, we got a lot of vibration from the fan, and we shut the engine down as a precaution when we landed, because all of us, there were about like 10 or 15 pilots on board, all doing their base training. We all piled out to have a look at this engine. And the engineers were already out there looking in the front. We could see the remains of this seagull that had been swallowed down the engine. And the engineers were out there with a soft hammer. And what had happened was, as the bird struck the fan blades, it hadn't done a lot of damage to the fan blades, but it had forced the blade, about 5 of the blades, into a position where they were twisted slightly and locked, rather than being loose and free to move about, which is what had created the out of balance and the vibration of the engine, which led us to shut it down. We have vibration indicators on the engine, that particularly on the fan, that we pay close attention to, that tell us if there's a problem. And they were out there tapping the blades with this soft hammer to free them up so they move properly in their joints. And then because there was effectively no damage done, when they cleaned and wiped them off and inspected them, the aircraft went back to service.
Very interesting. Yeah, I love that the sound that the fans make when the breeze is blowing through them, and
it's like having a wind chime, isn't it? Quite like to have one in my back garden, I think, when I retire.
Just
Paul, if you see one you can pinch for me, mate, can you?
The whole assembly?
Yeah, just a big front fan.
Big front
just
fan.
gently going. Yeah, but on a pole in my garden, it can sit and go around and tinkle. That'd be nice.
And you said that they had some kind of a hammer that they were.
Yeah, they're a soft hammer. A mallet with a soft plastic head rather than a metal.
Akhirnya kutemukan kopi premium Toraja.
I beg your pardon.
Ya, dalam Top Coffee Toraja Blend. Aromanya khas, tiap tegukan begitu nikmat, rasanya nagih.
This is what I was trying to play.
Was quizzical, studied back to physical science in the home.
Maxwell Silver.
Need to move it to the place where, that's what I was thinking of when you said something about.
Maxwell Silver Hammer made sure that she was dead.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm sure to be in trouble with YouTube.
Well, luckily it wasn't silver. They'd be expensive. The engineers keep stealing them.
Yeah. What a strange song that is.
Yeah,
but I love it though. It's a
Yeah,
great song.
likewise.
Once you hear it, then you'll be humming it for the rest of the evening. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Glad that's in my head now.
Let's see. Hey, you want to take a quick break?
Yes.
I do. I gotta pee like a racehorse.
I'm just going to ask a question first of all. You right in that red bit in the upper photograph? Can you still see that? It's beside blade number 1 on the close-up. Do you reckon that's a counterbalance, a balancing weight?
I'm thinking that's what it is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd like
Paul would be able to tell us. But I bet
Paul,
you're right.
if you're listening, as I hope you will, Perhaps you could tell us exactly what that is and how they balance out the fan, how that's physically performed. I'd be
Because
interested.
it looks like there's a place to put whatever that red thing is in multiple places around.
Looks
but
like a weight.
the second picture doesn't really show it as well, and it appears that there are some that, and actually in the first picture too, it's not in the slot next to it. So interesting.
Right. I think when he sent in his audio feedback, he did talk about using weights to kind of balance it out. So I bet that's what it is.
I mean, it's like having weights put on your car, but this looks a bit more sophisticated, as you'd hope.
Yeah, I really hope so. Okay, going to take a quick break, physiological break here, and then we'll be back. Let's see. Let me look at the time. It's 14. So,
are you going to play Plain Tales now, or no?
We could do that if you want.
I assume that's what you were getting at, but I could be wrong.
No, I was just going to take a physiological break. But
okay.
Usually try to wait to about the 2-hour point, but that's okay. We've been going for an hour and 35. So why don't we do that? Yeah, that's a good idea, Steph. So I think now would be a good time for this week's installment of the Old Pilot's Plain Tales. And this is kind of a part 2. This is another of our aircraft is missing.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. Another of our aircraft is missing. I've often wondered why it's so easy to start up an aircraft. It seems that the more expensive or potentially dangerous an aircraft is, the easier it is to get it going without a key, security code, or some other way to ensure that the person about to fire it up is authorized to do so. It's fair to say that GA aircraft that sit around small airfields without lots of security are often harder to pinch. There are usually door locks, and magnetos are often turned on with an ignition key, but even those are pretty flimsy, but at least they're a deterrent. How about military aircraft? Surely those have some kind of prevention device. Well, not so as you'd notice. Military bases are pretty hard to get into, and there tend to be lots of armed guards around. But the aircraft themselves, well, all you need to have is a little know-how, and you could be off on the ultimate joyride. So why hasn't it been done, you ask? Well, actually, it has. Let me take you back to 1969 and the sacred pages of Hansard, the document that contains what is referred to as the substantially verbatim account of every speech made in the Houses of Parliament since 1909. On this particular day, Mr. Eldon Griffiths of Bury St. Edmunds stated that
sometime during the morning of Friday, the 23rd of May, Sergeant Paul Mayer of the United States Air Force, who was stationed at Mildenhall in my constituency, was found staggering along the A11 road. The police, in accordance with the Visiting Forces Act, returned this young American to his base, where a security guard put him to bed to sleep it off.
Sergeant Mayer was a man with problems, very recently married and now separated from his wife by thousands of miles. He was becoming increasingly upset because his distressed wife desperately wanted him to come home as she was being sued by her ex-husband. In an alcoholic haze, Mayer thought he had found the perfect way to get home. He broke into the room of a captain, stole the keys to his truck, and then phoned ahead, calling himself Captain Epstein, and demanded that a C-130 was fueled up for a flight to the USA. The ground crew didn't question their supposedly superior officer, even though he smelled of drink and was alone, when he climbed into the C-130 and started it up and taxied onto the runway. Mayer had some flight training on small aircraft, but had never handled anything as big as a Hercules, but despite his lack of sobriety, he got airborne and flew south. The RAF and civil air traffic controllers, now alert to the unauthorized flight, tracked him as he skirted Heathrow and set off across the channel. The USAF scrambled an F-100 to intercept the stolen aircraft. On board, Mayer managed to use the HF radio to set up a phone patch to his wife, Jane, in the States. "Hi, honey," he started. "Guess what? I've got a bird in the sky and I'm coming home." He spoke to her for some time until, after being airborne for around 2 hours, he said, "Leave me alone for 5 minutes. I've got trouble." He was midway between Bournemouth and Cherbourg when he impacted the waters of the English Channel and died. Neither the wreckage nor the body of Sergeant Mayer were ever recovered. In an interview, his wife said that when he told me he was in trouble, I surmised the trouble must have been jets that were sent up to take him down. I'm sure I've not been told the whole truth. The official US Air Force report into the accident mentions that an F-100 jet fighter was scrambled from RAF Lakenheath shortly after Mayer took off in an effort to assist him, along with a C-130 from RAF Mildenhall. They were both apparently unsuccessful in establishing visual or radio contact with him. Back in the House of Commons, Mr. Griffiths goes on to describe another USAF aircraft that was borrowed by a mechanic.
"This is not the first such incident. In June 1958, another United States mechanic took off in a B-45 bomber from Alconbury Base in Huntingdon, and this aircraft crashed onto the London-Edinburgh railway line."
Indeed, Mr. Griffiths was quite correct. In June 1958, a mechanic, Airman Second Class Vernon L. Morgan, aged 21, absconded with a North American B-45A Tornado from the USAF base in Cambridgeshire. The four-engined B-45 was the USAF's first operational jet bomber and an important part of the United States nuclear deterrent. The 55 nuclear-capable Tornadoes arrived in the United Kingdom in 1952, but despite technical problems, these were the Tactical Air Command's first-line deterrent in Europe. I haven't been able to find out exactly how Vernon got access to the aircraft, but a newspaper article said that he took off into the night sky on a Friday around midnight. The B-45 normally required a crew of 4 to operate it, so perhaps not unexpectedly, particularly since he wasn't a trained pilot, Vernon's moment of glory ended when he died in a flaming crash only 3 minutes later, plunging his aircraft into the main London to Edinburgh railway line only a few minutes before an express train was due. Mr. Griffiths obviously had the bit between his teeth as he continued to cite more cases of aircraft theft.
There have been other occasions in the United States since then. One does not have to be a devotee of Dr. Strangelove to recognize that a huge aircraft carrying thousands of gallons of high-octane petrol, not to mention the possibility of even more deadly items, can be a lethal weapon in the hands of an untrained and possibly unstable man.
I'm not sure to which other events Mr. Griffiths is referring, but the history books tell us of many. Indeed, late one night in 1986, another 21-year-old mechanic, Lance Corporal Howard Foote Jr., climbed into an A-4M Skyhawk fighter bomber and took off from an unlit runway at the Marine Corps Air Station El Toro in California. The young man had always dreamed of flying a military jet and was an accomplished glider pilot, having set a world altitude record as a teenager. But After suffering an embolism in his elbow due to the high altitude, he failed his medical as a marine pilot. Having got airborne, Foote flew out over the sea towards San Clemente Island, apparently flying loops and rolls before returning after 45 minutes to try and land back at the airbase. By this time, the airfield lighting had been put on, and every runway was well lit, since his theft had been discovered. On the 5th attempt, he managed to touch down safely and bring the Skyhawk to a stop, before being very promptly arrested. Not only was his flight extremely reckless, he had chosen an unserviceable aircraft to fly that night. The aircraft's ailerons were out of alignment, and the nose wheel steering was faulty. The Lance Corporal was charged with an impressive array of offences and faced up to 9 years of hard labour, forfeiture of all pay, demotion, and a dishonourable discharge. However, luckily for Foote, the actual penalty imposed on him by the court-martial was remarkably light. Just 4.5 months, already served in the brig, and an other than honourable discharge from the Marine Corps. As it turns out, helicopters are also fair game for the odd jolly. In 1973, a young American soldier was trying hard to accomplish the particular set of skills needed to fly a machine that gets airborne by beating the air into submission rather than using aerodynamics. Sadly, he failed, or was washed out in the common vernacular of the country during the instrument phase of flying. He was subsequently assigned to Fort Meade, but Private First Class Preston harbored growing resentment at being failed, since he felt he was a great pilot. Finally, a few months later, around midnight, Preston executed his plan and stole a U.S. Army Bell UH-1 Iroquois Huey helicopter from Tipton Army Airfield at Fort Meade. After hovering over the houses on the base for a while, he set course across Anne Arundel County at low level. Finding a caravan park, he apparently landed his Huey there, climbed out, and ran around it several times before setting off again. In Dorsey, Maryland, he buzzed cars and knocked the antenna off a police car. By now, a couple of state police helicopters were following him as he flew over Baltimore-Washington Airport before heading off down the similarly named parkway at 50 feet with no lights on. He then made his way down the South Capitol Street Bridge before turning west and heading to the White House. He descended over the South Lawn for a while before landing, taking off again, and setting course for the Washington Monument, where he turned his lights back on and hovered at head height for a while, before heading back to the White House. A trooper in one of the following helicopters described him as one hell of a pilot, calling the hour-long chase a modern-day dogfight. Arriving at the White House for a second time, Preston hovered over the lawn, but this time the Executive Protection Service opened fire with shotguns, and the Huey bounced roughly to a halt, whilst the state police helicopters blocked his path to the building. Ashamed to have done such a dodgy landing when he just wanted to show everyone how good he was. Preston was wounded in the legs and then wrestled to the ground by the Secret Service. He pleaded guilty to wrongful appropriation and breach of the peace and was given 1 year plus a fine of $2,400. Since he had already been in custody for 6 months, all he ended up doing was 2 months hard labor before being given a general discharge by the Army for unsuitability. Really? There are other stories, like the F-86 Sabre mechanic that turned a high-speed taxi test into a flight around the airbase, and the RAF Wing Commander engineer who got airborne in a Lightning. For that story, you might want to listen to the tale called Taffy Holden's Lightning. Of course, pinching aircraft hasn't been the sole preserve of military mechanics. As recently as 2003, an airliner was stolen. A Boeing 727-200 series, registration November 844 Alpha Alpha, should you ever spot it, was sitting quite innocently at 4 de Febrero Airport in Luanda. This former American Airlines aircraft had been with that legacy airline for 25 years, before being sold to a Miami-based lease company, Aerospace Sales and Leasing. They had leased it on to TAAG Angola Airlines, but it had been grounded and sat idle at Luanda for over a year, accruing more than $4 million in backdated airport fees. The FBI, who are a bit interested in this aircraft's whereabouts, describe it as being of unpainted silver with a stripe of blue, white, and red down the fuselage. I wonder where that comes from. It was empty of passenger seats and fitted out with tanks to carry diesel fuel. Just before sunset on the 25th of May, 2 men boarded the aircraft. One was an American pilot, Ben Padilla, and the other was a hired mechanic from the Congo, John Mutantu. Neither men were certified to fly the 727, which normally needs a crew of 3, but they had both been working with an Angolan mechanic to get the aircraft ready for flight. The machine started up and began taxiing out without clearance or talking to the tower. It maneuvered erratically before entering the runway. The tower controllers tried to call it, but there was no response. It took off and departed into the setting sun and headed out towards the Atlantic Ocean. Neither the aircraft nor the men have ever been found. Reports found in the United States diplomatic cables leak indicate that the United States searched for the aircraft in multiple countries after the event. A regional security officer looked for it in Sri Lanka without result. A ground search was also conducted by diplomats stationed in Nigeria at multiple airports without finding it. Padilla's sister was reported to think that he crashed somewhere in Africa or was being held against his will. However, an extensive article, which included considerable research, was published in the Air and Space magazine, but was unable to draw any firm conclusions on the whereabouts or the fate of the aircraft or those who stole it. Perhaps we can conclude that crime doesn't pay. Music by bensounds.com.
What if we wanted to learn more?
Plane Tales is a featured segment of the Airline Pilot Guy Show Aviation podcast. Find us at airlinepilotguy.com.
I love this music. Wow. Lots of pinched, as you say, airplanes, especially the military.
Yeah, I know. I guess all the protection on a military base is at the perimeter. They don't expect one of their own to take it upon themselves to steal an aeroplane.
An inside job.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But, well, that Tornado, the B-45, was a 4-engine jet, for heaven's sake. And this guy, I wish I could have found out more about that one. But the guy was obviously had no training as a pilot, and thought it would be great fun on a late Friday night to get it airborne, and it didn't last very long, sadly. But I mean, what's some remarkable things?
I mean, yeah. I mean, how do you get all those engines started. I mean, I even thought the same thing of that C-130. You know, I think if I sat myself in a C-130 cockpit, I'm not sure I'd be able to figure out how to get the engines running.
No, I expect most of these guys were probably qualified to do ground runs and things. They probably had a basic understanding of it, or perhaps even doing taxi tests or something. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's I shouldn't chuckle. There were a couple of tragic circumstances the way some of those flights ended, but particularly the guy that pinched the Huey and landed it at the White House. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
President Nixon, I think, was the incumbent president, wasn't actually in the White House that night there. So no harm done.
Oh. Good
Can you imagine that happening today, though? Like, just the media coverage would be outstanding.
It would. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Different days back then. All right. Thank you again, Captain Nick, old pilot.
Oh, I love that one. That was good. Thanks.
For the great plane tales. Always a highlight of the show. All right. Paul and Dave both wrote in with weight and balance related questions. We'll start with Paul, who sent us some audio feedback.
Hello, Captains Jeff, Nick, and Dana, along with the lovely Steph. This is Paul from San Diego. I had a question. I fly pretty regularly, and these days most of the flights are pretty full. And I do remember, though, that on some of the more sparsely populated flights, that the captain or the plane would not allow people to reseat themselves. In particular, let's say a couple rows were empty or a row was empty. Meanwhile, based on the reservation you booked, you're stuck with 3 people in a row. And the reason that was always given was due to weight and balance considerations. But these days, people have the ability to kind of rebook their seat at will, and I wonder if that's still a consideration. Is it ever the case that somebody's not allowed to move seats, or let's say, in a crazy world, everybody picked the seats on the left side of the plane? Would the seat selection or the gate crew not allow those people to keep those seats and try to evenly distribute the passengers? How do you manage that? How do you, from a flight safety perspective, decide whether or not people need to reseat themselves in order for, proper weight distribution? And as a secondary question related to weights and balances, when luggage is being loaded on the plane, I assume that when the luggage goes in the cargo hold, that there is some kind of baffling system to keep the luggage from shifting around, but I don't know. I haven't actually had the opportunity to look inside of the cargo portion as we see the ground crew loading the bags on the planes. Anyways, hope that's reasonably clear. Keep up the great work. Love the show, and blue skies and fair winds.
That's a baffling question. Bam. I'll answer that last part first because I'm still thinking about it. The baffling, and I guess it depends on the airplane. The airplane that I fly, then Dana fly, does not have the kind of system that the airplane that Nick flies, which has a standard, what do you call those containers? They have a certain name.
Baggage containers.
Cargo?
Yeah,
Cargo?
like UIDs or something like that.
The big metal containers?
What was it again, Nick?
It's something at ULD.
ULD, that's right. Yeah.
Which stands for Universal
Loading Device.
Yeah.
ULD.
Give me a moment while I Google it.
Yeah. While I vamp for you, you can look it up. But so yeah, the Mad Dog
Unit load device.
Ah, yes, of course.
There you go.
Obviously, anyone would know that.
Obviously. But I think we've had trouble with that acronym before on the show.
I think so. You think we've learned, but
you'd think no way.
No, you'd be wrong.
Yeah. Basically, every airplane that I've flown except the L-1011, every airliner, which means that only the 727 and Mad Dog for me, but they don't have baffles, and the luggage is loose in the cargo compartments. Now on the Mad Dog, we have 3 doors and 6 bins. So basically each door, if you look to the left, that's one bin, in quotation marks, and if you look to the right of the door, that's the other bin, but it's all one big space. And same thing with the mid and the forward cargo compartment. And normally what you do, most of the luggage on a Mad Dog is placed in the aft bin, the last cargo compartment.
Is that word placed a euphemism for something?
What's that?
The word placed a euphemism for something?
I don't think so.
No, not thrown, chucked, tossed.
Placed. Yes. Well, at that point when they're loading it, there's not a lot of chucking going on there. I was watching today. We were loading at Bradley International, and the guy was pulling off one of these bags from the baggage cart to put onto the belt loader, and it was obvious that he wasn't anticipating that this bag was going to be so heavy, because as soon as it was pulled off that shelf of the cargo cart, it just like dropped and hit the ground pretty hard. I'm thinking,
poor guy.
I hope the passenger is not looking at that. But anyway, yeah. So I was thinking to myself, man, they must get a really, really good workout with all the heavy bags out there. But anyway,
it can't be good for your back. It's a tough job.
So they put them on the bag loader, and on the Mad Dog, they try to put everything as far aft as possible, because I think that gives the best economy as far as the way the trim would be set on the tail, on the stabilizer. And I think the less deflection on the stabilizer, the less drag that you're going to have, and the better economy that you're going to get. So, I mean, they stuffed these things from the baggage compartment floor to the ceiling. And in fact, we've had issues in the past where they stuffed it so tightly that it was actually pressing up against the ceiling of the cargo compartment. And we have, this airplane that I fly, it doesn't have wires going back to the controls. It has cables, and cables for all the rudder and the elevator and the stabilizer. All that kind of stuff is back there running through behind the walls of the cargo compartment. And they've had some issues in the past where the crews have had flight control issues because they stuffed it so much. And every time I look when I'm doing my walk around, I look up there and I'm thinking, I hope they're not stuffing them too tightly in the back. But
that's a good title for the show.
I hope they're not stuffing them too tightly. Yes.
Don't stuff them tightly.
That's what she said.
Stuffed tightly. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, well, don't get carried away there, Steph.
I know. I need to stop. I'm sorry.
So where were we? So as far as I know, in most of the airplanes that I've flown, there are no baffles. But I guess the ULDs, which stands for Uniform Loading Device. Unit Loading Device.
Yeah.
Damn it. I guess that's sort of a form of baffling, because each ULD is a separate item. So in a way, there's a baffling.
It's just a lightweight shaped box that is vaguely fuselage shaped. And on the base of it, it's designed to engage with the movement system that exists on the loader and in the cargo hold of sophisticated airplanes, so that I was waiting for some change of expression, Jeff. Sorry.
I was ignoring you.
Oh, okay.
I heard you, I'm appearing as if I'm not accepting your arb.
The floor of the cargo loaders and in the cargo hold itself are these rotating motorized. They're like little balls. They're probably the size of a large softball or a baseball, and they can drive the ULDs along and in, and they're controlled by the loaders, and they just basically automatically slide these devices into the hold and then scoot them up to the end. So when you do want to get someone's bag out of there that you're offloading a passenger, it can be sort of convenient because we have a computer that tells us which ULD it's in. In fact, whether it's top, middle, or bottom of that, so the guys know where to go find the bag and unload it if a passenger hasn't pitched up.
So would you consider an airplane that had unit load devices modern?
Oh, yeah, no, because no, modern airplanes would have sort of
yeah, so you're kind of gotten yourself into a little predicament because the L-1011 had unit load devices.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I guess they're a device that is common throughout the entire aviation industry. So even though it was designed back in the distant past for the L-1011, we've had to keep that standard ever since. So
okay,
there you go.
Sort of. I'll give you half credit for that.
I was wriggling out there.
But as far as the captain saying that you're not allowed to reseat yourself, Paul, that is just part of our passenger harassment program. There's no connection to reality at all. You can sit wherever the heck you want. No, I'm just kidding. I think. I guess it can be critical depending on your cargo load, your fuel load. For instance, if it's a short flight and it's not a, as you said, heavily populated flight, we sometimes do get messages from load planning that says that everybody has to stay in their seat. And in fact, stand by, stay at the gate until you get your weight and balance information, because we may actually have to load sandbags into one of the cargo compartments to make sure that the CG is in the safe envelope for flight. So that occasionally happens.
That's interesting. Did your plumbing just go then?
That was thunder outside my window.
I thought it was just plumbing.
I told you the storm arrived, so it sounded very close. Actually.
My stomach
did, didn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't that. Anyway,
I was just going to say, sitting on the left or the right is probably not going to affect you one iota because you're so close to the center of gravity. It makes very little difference. However, if you've got a whole bunch of kids that are put as adults, that would make quite a significant difference to the weight. And of course, the further you are from the moment arm, from the center of gravity, the longer the moment arm, the bigger difference it would make.
Well, funny you should mention that, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
The other piece of feedback, Dave, he says, listening to 322 when you were discussing passenger loading for weight and balance reminded me of a Qantas flight a few years back where the check-in staff placed a school group at the rear of a Boeing 737-800 and didn't label the group as children.
Oh, well,
Ended up having issues on takeoff. Greater pressure on the yoke for takeoff. Afterwards, worked out that the takeoff weight was 3.5 to 5 tons over what it was actually. So what they thought they were heavier than they actually were. And so I guess they were a bunch of kids and they were marked as regular adult passengers. And so the weight and balance was all out of whack.
It's interesting. I guess I'm just trying to think how they do control it when passengers want to pick their own seats. I guess if it's going to be a major problem, they would actually just change people's seat numbers at the gate. So as the person that controls this in our company is the TCO, the turnaround coordinator, and they with another system do all the weight and balance. And if they discover they needed to move passengers, they would just have to move passengers. And as they boarded, they would change, as you put your boarding pass in and the machine checked it, if you had a change of assignment, the lady would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you need to go and speak to the clerk here," and they'd give you a different seat to correct that weight and balance problem.
Which begs the question, on an airline like Southwest Airlines that does not have assigned seating, I wonder how they handle this situation. Steph, you've flown them a lot.
I have, and I've flown them on when I was actually much younger. Actually, I think with swimming trips a couple of times. I, at that time, was a little bit older, so I was a teenager, but there were plenty of children flying with us and less adults than children. and I don't remember it. Just to my memory as a 16 or 17-year-old, I don't remember there being a whole lot of shuffling around, but most of us chose to sit with our friends. So there was a lot of there were a lot of groups of children sitting together, but I think it was pretty well spread out throughout the cabin, because even still, when you get on the plane, some of those seats are already going to be taken by other groups of people. So interestingly, that was back in the days of when they had the lounge seating. So I can remember sitting in the lounge seating at the exit row. So you had a row of forward seats and a row of backward seats, so you could face each other, which was always kind of fun.
We
Although you
always
had to be at least 15 to sit in the exit seat then. And we were like, yes, we're all 15.
and we're allowed to drink as well.
That's right.
Yeah, 21 actually.
21, yeah.
We sometimes have a problem because we, like you, Jeff, like to keep the center of gravity a little aft, because the aircraft flies like 3 degrees nose up in its cruise attitude, and you don't really want to have any continuous control input to make that happen, because it creates more drag. You'd rather the aircraft was trimmed to fly at that nose up attitude by weight distribution. Now, our problem is the seating for the hoity-toity passengers at the very front of the airplane that have the best seats. That is the heaviest seating by far. It's really quite a weight in the front of the airplane. So we always try and bias the cargo towards the aft. And when they can't do that, you always notice that when you're trimming the airplane out and checking the trim, if you're right at the front of the trim wheel and there's a green band on the trim wheel to indicate what is legal and what is when the aircraft goes out of trim, when it's illegal, you can sometimes be very close to the front of that green band. And then I'm scratching my head thinking, that's going to affect our fuel consumption. And I'm wondering if perhaps we've got to put a little bit extra on, because it should be taken into account by the computers, but sometimes they're not quite as accurate as they should be. And the fuel should be calculated for that. But sometimes I sneak a bit of extra fuel on just in case the burn is a bit higher.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly.
And what is the saying? You can never have too much fuel unless you're on fire.
Yes, I like that. It's a good one.
Yes.
I don't think the chief pilot agrees with me.
No, they have different priorities. Well, Paul and Dave, thank you very much for your questions and comments regarding passenger weight and balance, or airplane weight and balance. Let's see. Oh, wow, this is really good. I think, Nick, do you want to do number 11? Because I think this person, Andy, that sent us a feedback, Well,
yeah, I'd love to, actually. Thanks. Yeah, Andy Anderson, those of you who are deputies or plain wet tails may remember that he's World War II pilot, now in his 90s, lives in Australia, and very closely related to me, who has found the show, would you believe, and sent in some feedback because of... well, I'll read the letter. So, dear Captain Nick, I have just finished watching Airline Pilot Guy and thoroughly enjoyed it. The story of the cracked windscreen reminds me of an occasion of an overnight flight from Rio to Las Palmas. We just settled into the flight off the coast of Brazil when the starboard windscreen crazed with an almighty bang. We immediately commenced an emergency descent, holding our breath that the entire windscreen would not blow out. Leveling out at 10,000 feet, it was time to make a few decisions, i.e. whether to return to Rio or continue the flight at 10,000 feet, and if we did that, how much extra fuel we would be burning and where we could land on the other side of the South Atlantic. The Cape Verde Islands were the obvious choice, and working out our flight time and fuel consumption within the safety requirements, we found not only could we reach the islands at dawn, and that was the time that the little airfield opened. Also, thank goodness for the VC-10, the landing strip was well within our requirements. The next job was to contact air traffic control, and that took some doing in those days. No such thing as satellites. At last, we managed to alter our flight plan, and with the help of HF's single sideband, we managed to notify the company of our intentions so that they could position a replacement windscreen to Las Palmas, so causing as little delay as possible. The passengers were, of course, kept in the loop, and my biggest worry then, excuse me, was the intertropical front, now known as the intertropical convergence zone, which wanders, as you know, up and down the South Atlantic. On our route, we always had to cross it, and with the VC-10 at high altitude and good radar, we could usually weave between the thunderheads. At 10,000 feet, we were expecting a pretty rough ride. However, we must have done something right, because on that night, the gods were kind to us, hardly a ripple the whole way. We must have woken the inhabitants of the island when we circled, but all went well. We refueled and finally landed in Las Palmas an hour or so before a new windscreen turned up. Keep up the good work on Airline Pilot Guy, as it brings me right up to date. Pop. P.S. I don't remember any management guys telling us we'd done a good job. I see nothing has changed.
Yes.
Yeah, over
Some
the
things
years.
remain the same, right?
Well, thanks very much, Andy, or my pop. So great feedback. Thank you.
Very cool. I wish I could get some of my family to listen to the show.
It is nice. It is nice.
Does your dad listen to the show, Steph?
Yeah, he does.
Awesome. Oh well. Yeah, that's great.
You just have to make do with the 1.9 million other listeners.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
My family actually does listen to the show, and because all of you listening are my family.
Yay.
That's right.
VC-10.
Dad, can I have some more pocket money?
Sure. Is it time for your allowance again?
Yep.
All right. Let me get some money out of here, out of the drawer. The VC-10 didn't realize it had that kind of range. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it did. It did one stop between London and Rio. So yeah, you can get across the Atlantic, no problem. It was a very capable airplane at the time, considering how early it was.
Excellent. Well, Andy Anderson, thank you for sending in the feedback. Thank you for listening to the show. Much appreciated. And we're all big fans of you and your son,
Indeed.
too.
Indeed.
And don't forget, he's got 3 sons.
And your
We don't know them.
The oldest? Are you the oldest?
Youngest and least important.
Youngest.
I am.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, I know. And I've been told that so many times.
Shall I edit this out in post or?
No.
Okay.
Character building. That's all it is. Just character.
Exactly right.
Ah, all right.
It's the ground engineer, my eldest brother, that continues to remind me of that.
Yes. Aren't siblings great?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. They are. Love mine.
Let's get a more positive response there, Steph.
Yes.
There you go.
Woo.
Woohoo! Yay. Okay. Number 12. Alejo writes, and this is a good one.
Alejo?
Is it Alejo?
I think so.
Alejo.
I don't know.
Alejo.
Alejo.
So, I love doing this show because people listen to it. We talk about things, and then somebody's listening to what we're saying and going, "Hey, I know something that you all don't because I have inside information." So, let's read Alejo's email. Dear Captain Jeff, Steph, Nick, and Dana, you can guess by my name in the email, but for safety reasons, you can call me Alejo. I'm a 321 captain for Acme Blue, the biggest airline here in Vietnam. I wanted to comment about the Viet Jet event. To my understanding, it was a training flight. And this is the event we talked about. I think was it the last show? Or the
Yes,
show
Yes, it was. Yeah.
where we talked about the fact that they got all kinds of warnings, and they got the engine EGT overtemp warnings and stall warnings, not aerodynamic stall, but engine stall warnings and some other electrical warnings as well. Okay, so To my understanding, it was a training flight composed of one captain with a cadet first officer with experience of no more than 300 total hours, and one safety pilot on the jump seat that was a first officer with nearly 1,000 hours total experience. The engines got EGT over limit, and both engines stalled nearly at the same time. Due to the severity of the failures, the captain avoided visually the mountain, disregarding the EOSID. Is that a
The
fixed
engine out?
Oh, okay.
SID, engine out
SID.
Departure. Yeah.
Standard instrument departure. And found the way to put the airplane safely on ground with only one engine that was also damaged. My hat is off for this crew. The airplane was grounded for investigation for a couple of weeks. Then they changed both engines, and now it's back online. As soon as I know something else, I'll let you know if you like. Yeah, we like. Thank you. It's good stuff. Always great to see this kind of thing. About the, I mean, not the event, but the inside information is always kind of cool. About the landing on Cameron Airport in, okay, so that was that event. And that's all we know.
Very well handled by that crew, by the sounds of it. That's
absolutely
fantastic.
it is. And they have some, he included some photos of the track of the flight out of Da Nang, and also looks like the captain's handwritten narrative of the incident.
I think that's for the second one. The second incident. Yeah.
Oh, okay, you're right.
The handwritten narrative is for the second one. I think
the last thing there.
The last thing is
thing.
definitely.
So that's what I wanted to talk about. Thank you, Steph. That last photo shows all of the, it's like a readout of all the
yeah, this is a standard
status
post-flight report that the aircraft will generate from its own computer systems. And this is usually is much more detailed than you would get in
and it shows the exact like time that these messages
Yeah.
were. Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Well, they're saying that initially it got fuel inerting system full. I don't think that's relevant to the problem.
Okay.
And at 0322, engine 1 EGT over limit, and at exact the same time, engine 2 EG over limit, then an engine 1 stall, then a second EGT2 over limit, then an engine 1 again EGT over limit. So it sounds like it was bouncing up and down at the limit, and this is all within a period of, well, it
the same minute.
Yeah, the same minute. Yeah. Then an engine 2 stall. So they've had both engines over temperature, both engines stall, then more EGT over limits of both engines, and then engine 1 was shut down. Then they get the electrical fault because on the engine shutdown, the essential buzz, the AC, alternating current essential buzz, is supposed to be picked up by the running engine because they've just shut down the engine that normally feeds it, and that hasn't been run. So then you get up with a fault message indicating that that electrical distribution bus has a fault. Then they get the autopilot fails. They get a electrical DC buzz fault, so they've lost both their essential buzzes. I mean, that is a serious number of faults, and all within the total thing was in a period of 2 minutes. So yeah, he's quite right. That was a desperate situation for the crew to be in, and they obviously did a very good job getting it back on the ground so well.
Yeah, and they're in an area with high terrain, and wow, yeah, all of our hats are off as well, too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Captain.
Yeah. Brilliant job by the crew, particularly considering the inexperience of the first officer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the other incident involving a Vietnam-based airline, the Cam Ranh Airport in Nha Trang. You know, he didn't say anything about my bad pronunciation of all that.
I think
well, just assume that it was correct then.
That's what I'm assuming.
I'm assuming we're keeping it in for comedy.
That too. I mean, I wasn't going to say that to Jeff.
I love it. It was an experienced captain from a foreign country, the United States, but he only had 3 months working for Vietnam Airlines, but flying a little bit more than that 1 month. And the first officer was a local with nearly 1 year experience. So not a very experienced crew. The first officer was pilot flying, and it was first landing of the captain at that runway. And he asked 2 times. He asked his first officer twice that if that was the runway when they were coming in. And this airport does not have any information about the new runway on the approach charts. Also, no TAMs at that time. They recently painted the runway, so both runways were separated for about 30 meters. That's pretty close. 30 meters.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
With the same markings.
I can only assume that they're not actually going to keep both runways open. What's the point of having 2 runways so close?
Yeah, they must be like going to use the other one as a taxiway or something, maybe.
Yeah, you think so, wouldn't you?
I mean, indicating 20. There was no 20 left, no 20 right. Both are 20. Also, the PAPIs were off without any NOTAM as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Before, it was only a VOR approach that required sim training for captains, but since 6 months ago, they implemented an ILS for runway 02 and an RNAV for runway 20. So new hires will not be familiar with the airport in the sim and underline training. The ATC has a radar since 2 months ago, but there's only one ATC guy providing. That's a good podcast, by the way, ATCguy.com.
It's a sister podcast to the Airline Pilot Guy.
The Airline Traffic Controller Guy.
Yeah.
Providing weather info, delivery, ground, tower, and control. So the guy at the time was very busy, and he wasn't able to notice the mistake of the crew. And my editorial comment here, if the runway is only separated by 30 meters, I'm not sure how he would, even if he was staring at the airplane coming in, I'm not sure how he could determine whether or not he was lined up on the correct runway or not. Anyway, on rush hours, the ATC easily control one airplane arriving and departing every 3 minutes. Wow. Busy place for very
one person.
Light staff.
Yeah.
All crew and ATC has been suspended until further advice. And after the event, they published NOTAMs plus charts plus an airport brief. Too late, Leo says. Yes, we agree. Yeah, they're covering their posteriors, apparently. And we were wondering about how, or the article that I was reading was wondering about how they were going to get the airplane to the other part of the airport. And he says the airplane was towed to the ramp. And so he continues, I wish all the best for the APG crew. And one advice for Dana in his upgrade, be careful in the simulator when you sit on the left seat for the first time. Based on my personal experience, you will get super dizzy on the first day on this, when you're in the sim. And it's very difficult to do things with your right hand, for example, moving the seat or locating any switch or selector. For sure, every time you look for the checklist, you will turn to the wrong side. It's very weird and funny at the same time. Yeah, probably funny for the other person you're flying with.
Yeah.
For the instructor.
Yeah, for them as well. Dana, you have the best intro on the show. Yeah, he likes the latest intro for. I like it too. It's good stuff. Anyway, regards, Alejo, and he sent in the photos and the information. I mean, Alejo, wow, thank you so much. It's so nice that you're listening over there in Vietnam, and I know that English is not your native language, and the effort that you made to send this feedback in English was just above and beyond. And our hats are off to you for sending this to us, and it's always interesting to get the behind the scenes kind of look.
Yeah, great
Absolutely.
information.
Yeah.
Really detailed. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. It explains a lot. And, I only hope that the airline are suitably sympathetic with the American pilot, the American captain who ended up on the wrong runway, because it sounds like all the cards were stacked against him.
Yeah, I think so too. And interestingly, in the photo that he sent of the handwritten narrative from the captain, he said, I sincerely apologize for this occurrence, and I will cooperate with any requests. So obviously he's like bending over backwards to say, look, here's the situation. I was led down the primrose path, in my opinion, but I realize, I messed up, and I'll do anything I can to assist in fixing this. So.
That's actually a great attitude to have, and I applaud him for that, because I wish we'd had more of it, or have more of it in the airline. We're pretty good generally at holding our hands up and admitting our mistakes, but yeah, that was well said from this point.
Yep, and without reading it all, it's actually particularly nice because it just offers details without sounding like excuses. You know, it's just here's the facts. It was this, this, and this. I'm sorry. Let me know what I can do.
We might as well read it. Steph, you want to read it?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. It says landed new runway 20 at, what is that? VVCR, Victor Victor.
How do you say that in
Charlie
Vietnamese?
I have to go back and find it.
That's okay.
Cavron Airport in Trang. After RNAV 20 approach, runway marking was marked 20 and no other markings for 20 were readable on any other pavements. New runway not depicted on charts and no cross or X at new runway threshold. No PAPI lights illuminated. I realized after landing that it was a new runway under construction and I brought the aircraft to a full stop. I sincerely apologize for this occurrence and I will cooperate with any requests.
Yeah. Good safety attitude, I think.
Absolutely. And I hope that Vietnam Airlines have a no jeopardy policy for this sort of thing. So when guys put up their hands and go, I've made a mistake, but you know, there are mitigating circumstances, I hope they're taking that into account.
I hope so too. Okay. Let's see. Philip, as a 19-year-old aspiring economics major at California State University SM. I got lost that right. In San Diego, California. California State University. What would SM stand for?
Santa Maria.
San Marcos.
San Marcos. I don't know.
That California State University, San Marcos in North San Diego.
Okay. Was that in here somewhere?
No.
Okay, good.
Clever. She's a doctor.
Wow. That's why we have Steph, because she's the smart one.
Absolutely.
The Google.
Oh. Okay. I'm
San
lucky
Marcos
enough.
must be somewhere near San Diego. It's a suburban city in the North County area of San Diego County.
Oh, North County, San Diego. Great brewery. Stone.
So Steph knows the universities, you know the breweries.
I do. Yeah. You can see where our priorities.
Priorities.
I'm not a doctor. I'm lucky enough to listen to your podcast every day on my commute to school. Thank you all for the hard work you guys put into making this amazing podcast possible. You are welcome, Philip. It's our pleasure, actually. Just a few questions. Has anyone of the crew been to San Diego? Yes.
Yes.
I have many times.
No.
Thoughts? No, I usually don't have many. Also, has anyone flown into SAN, San Diego, the Lindbergh field, I believe? Yes, I have. Lastly, Captain Nick, do you prefer the A330 or 340? And is the A340-600 your favorite variant of the 340? I can answer that question. Yes. Again, thanks for the amazing podcast. Wishing you guys unlimited visibility. Thank you, Philip. And he has a little bit, he has a postscript here.
Oh, he's swearing. Look, he's swearing.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh.
He says 777.
Very
Whereas
cute.
we prefer 777.
Going to Thailand via Philippines Airlines 777-300ER in August. Any tips on traveling to Thailand, if any of the crew has been?
Yep, stay away from the 777.
And the bathhouses.
I don't think that was exactly his question.
Pat Pong, mate, go there. If only for the light show.
Okay. Let's, where is that thing I'm going to play here? I know it's here somewhere.
Bit behind the drag curve there, Jeff.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Yeah. That's all we're going to say about Thailand. It's a beautiful country.
It is.
I've never been. Sorry, not helpful.
I've only been very briefly. We landed when I was flying the C-141 Starlifter in the Air Force. We landed at Utapao for fuel. That's it. So
what, you didn't manage to break it there? What's the matter with you guys?
I don't know. I was a new guy and I didn't know what was going on.
God damn it.
Anyway, getting back to, let's see, the first question. Yeah, I think we've all, well, I don't know. Nick, have you been to San Diego?
No.
Okay. Beautiful place, by the way.
Nice.
And I heard that Steph piped in, said
Mm-hmm.
that she has. Have you ever flown into SAN, Steph? As a passenger?
As a passenger, yes. Yeah. Me personally flying the airplane, no. But it is a neat approach into that airport.
It is. And I think it's overblown. A lot of people make a big deal of it because of, I don't know if they've changed this. It's been a while since I've been in there, but it used to be if you're landing to the west, you have to come in very on the glide path. You get kind of close to a parking garage.
Yeah, there's some buildings, some structures to the north, correct? Out
Yes.
the right side of the aircraft. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I remember
And
correctly.
it's like everybody freaks out about that, but it's really it's not that big of a deal. It really isn't. I flew in there a lot in the 727, and then when I checked out as first officer in the L1011, my initial operating experience had us going into LA, and then what we'd do at night, we'd fly the L1011 almost empty down to San Diego to get it out of the way of the gates and stuff up at LAX. And I think they used it the next morning to fly from San Diego to Hawaii. So I looked at the fact that San Diego was on my rotation, my trip. And I was telling my wife that, at least, when you're doing an initial operating experience, usually every single leg is your leg. I mean, they want you to fly as much as possible. When I saw San Diego on there, I thought, well, that's a special requirements airport that they're not going to let me. You have to be a captain to fly into San Diego. So I was making, that point in the airplane. I think when we were heading to LA, I said, yeah, it looks like I get a break. I don't have to fly into San Diego. And the line check airman looked over at me and said, yeah, well, that's true, except if you're flying with a line check airman. I said, it's your leg from LA to San Diego. And I went, oh, okay. But no big deal. It really was a no issue thing at all. It's not the longest runway in the world, but it's not super short either. So
I'm sure no different than flying into Midway.
No.
In Chicago. Yeah.
No. Or National at the time.
Yeah.
They've extended the runway now, but or LaGuardia. Flying that L1011 into LaGuardia was like, really? We're gonna land there? Huh? Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I have to say about San Diego. Beautiful city, great people, great airport, and Captain Nick, do you prefer the A330 or the 340?
The 340 and actually the 340-600. We don't have any of the 340-300s anymore. The 340-300 is, people joke about it. They don't specify which type. They just say, the 340 very underpowered. It gets airborne.
I think I've heard somebody.
Or APUs, it gets airborne due to the curvature of the Earth. So we've all heard that.
It falls away from the aircraft as it accelerates more.
Exactly right. So the 340-300 was a little that way. It had quite a poor rate of climb. The 600 was remarkably different. For a start, it was like over 100 tons heavier. And it's got Trent 500s, very powerful engines. In fact, the engines will climb you above the capability of the wing to support you. So, instead of being limited by the engine thrust to your maximum altitude, you're actually limited by the wing performance because the engines are so good. So, I get a little bit upset when people, no, I don't really. But I like pointing out that the 600.
Oh, you should see him. He gets very upset. He starts pounding the wall.
Yeah, banging my head against the wall. The 600 is a lovely airplane. It's sophisticated. It's big. It's long.
I love the proportions of it. The 300 doesn't look right. It doesn't look.
No, elegant. It looked a bit like a little 707, the 300.
And it's like
and the engine's very slim. Yeah, a little bit nose down.
Yeah, nose down.
Or it's
the 600 is really pretty.
Yeah, I think so. A great looking airplane.
Yeah.
It was when we first got them brand new. We were the launch customer in the UK. So it was right from absolute brand spanking new out of the hangars. They were great airplanes. They still are. We've still got a number of them.
And the best pilots at Acme Red fly those things.
Of course, yes. All the other pilots are out of work because the bin liner isn't actually doing anything much nowadays.
We can't go one episode without dinging the 787, can we?
I think we've done it several times this
well,
show.
Yeah, we have.
It's entirely justified. I'm sorry.
Dead horse comes to mind, Steph.
I know. Yeah.
There's a new name for it. Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Don't give
Joe,
him any more ideas.
like he needs any more fodder.
No.
Joe writes from Casper, KCPR, Kilo Charlie Papa Romeo. Captain Jeff and crew finally got caught up over the weekend with APG podcasts and listened intently to the latest plane tales regarding lost aircraft. Surprisingly, there are a number of aircraft, mostly general aviation, that are never found or found years later. We just lost a Cessna 206 in the Colorado Rockies this winter, and as of yet, the aircraft and the pilot have not been found. I also give you an example of Steve Fawcett, who went on a short local flight, and despite one of the largest searches in history, with over $1.6 million spent in the effort, his aircraft was not located during the search. Some identification and a few bones were found over a year later by a hiker. I think this was aliens, actually. That's good. I'm just kidding. I fly as a mission pilot for the Civil Air Patrol. Thank you very much for the service there, Joe. Air Force Auxiliary, and would like to pass on a few items for your listeners to consider who are flying smaller GA aircraft. First off, I'm not an advocate of ELTs, either the older 121.5 and the newer 406 beacons, which still have a 121.5 carrier. While many may disagree with my opinion, we have had some struggles over the years performing electronic searches with ELTs. I won't go into a great deal in the essence of keeping this brief, but they don't always work as they were intended. While I wouldn't go strip it out of my aircraft, and you legally can't, I wouldn't bet my life on an ELT. I do believe in and put my money into a PLB, or personal locator beacon. I am partial to my SPOT, that's SPOT, but there are others that work equally as well. I keep my SPOT located within an arm's reach, and it is set up to ping every few minutes so that your friends and family can track your flight almost in real time. Second, keep your cell phone on, and if you have time and an emergency, dial 911. Leave it in that mode while you deal with your emergency, and there is no need to see if anyone answers. You may not realize it, but there are search personnel who are trained in cell phone and radar track forensics. Search and rescue personnel have used this cell phone data to locate missing aircraft and, at a minimum, narrow the search area by the use of your cell phone data. Finally, while you may not want to deal with filing a flight plan, although I would never discourage that, the lost aircraft in Colorado did not file. I would strongly encourage everyone to use VFR flight following. I've only been turned down once by ATC, and when you do use this service, it helps in making you a better pilot. The bonus to this is you may get to listen in on one of the APG crew working the comms. I also would encourage pilots to keep a handheld radio in your flight bag. If you do survive a crash, most likely the aircraft radios will be destroyed. This gives the pilot an additional way to try and communicate with other aircraft overhead on guard and search and rescue personnel. Finally, the first AOPA fly-in of the year is scheduled for Missoula, Montana in June. There should be a number of pilots attending, and I hope that we can get an APG meetup in the works. Weather permitting, the Flying Cowboys will be there. Love the show. Congrats to Dana for making captain, and I appreciate all the effort that the APG crew puts forth to keep us wannabes afflicted with the APG syndrome. Cheers and tailwinds. Joe in Wyoming.
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw. Yeah, the Cowboys.
Flying
Cowboys. I love that. And again, thank you so much for being a mission pilot for the Civil Air Patrol. That's an amazing job.
What exactly does that mean, Jeff? Because being an outsider,
the Civil Air Patrol, as he mentions, is an auxiliary unit of the Air Force, and it's a civilian unit. So you're not these aren't Air Force officers or Air Force people, but it's a function of the Air Force, and it's an organization that goes out and helps find, helps augment search and rescue missions. I don't know all of the things they do, but that's the big thing that they do that I can recall is they're a major factor in doing search and rescue missions. And they typically use general aviation airplanes.
A lot of times they're using 182s. That's what they use in this area.
182s and 172s. And I remember, is it Raleigh-Durham? I think when you're taxiing out, I often see they usually have a nice paint job, with the Civil Air Patrol stuff on it. And it's so I guess it's kind of a quasi-military unit, although without being a full military commitment.
Okay, sounds good. So they're all volunteers. They do it in their own time. They're probably not paid, or I don't know. I'm guessing, but excellent.
And we have a lot of folks that listen to the show are involved with the Civil Air Patrol, and so we really, in fact, I was just thinking about the Houston meetup that we had, and one of the folks there was one of the high-ranking people in that region for the Civil Air Patrol. And it's just it's a really great program, and it's a great way for young folks interested in aviation to get involved with aviation. And I'm not sure exactly what's required to get a position flying and all that kind of stuff, but anyway.
Yeah. Of course, that example that Joe brings to mind of Steve Fawcett, it was incredible, really, because that guy had a huge amount of money, and I'm sure his family spent, well, they said over 1.6 million trying to find him, and you think to yourself, well, how on earth can something the size of an aircraft go missing and just be found by accident a year later or so? So, it does remind you, and I was kind of in my last plane tale, not the previous one, saying, wasn't it remarkable that this aircraft wasn't found in Alaska? Well, that's a lot more evil territory, harder to find things than it would be down where in Colorado, even in the Rockies.
The population density in our country, especially in the West, is very. I think Wyoming,
especially Wyoming,
densely populated of any of the states. And when you hear people talk about worried about overpopulation and everything else, you think I do a lot of flying, and you need to get out of the city occasionally and see that.
There's a lot of empty space out there still.
Yes.
Population ranked 50th. There are 50 states. Density is 5.97 per square mile, which is actually 49th. So maybe Montana is fewer, or Alaska.
Could be.
So about 6 people every square mile.
Yeah.
How do you ever find a girlfriend? I mean, you just keep wandering around.
I think most of those people are in a city in
That's why they have
like Cheyenne. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope nobody heard me say that.
No. I did.
Okay.
We heard it. We all heard it.
Darn it. You know what? Thank you, Liz, for adding the extras there, because we had such a sparse news folder this week. But I'm going to give all of you listening a treat. We're going to make it a shorter episode this week, and we're gonna move those that Liz very kindly added to the next episode, if that's all right with you all, unless you want to keep going.
No, it's fine by me. I think Nick's got stuff to do in the morning, so
I think it's a good place to stop. We covered everything we intended to, and I think it was a good show. Thank you very much, all of you, for your great feedback, and the two of you for helping me answer the questions. And do
you think we made 50% this week?
I think we're awfully darn close.
I think so. And just to back up some stats that I was just giving out, I said it was either Montana or Alaska that was probably 50th for population density. It's Alaska, and Montana's 48th.
That makes sense.
So, yeah.
Oh, we didn't quite make 50%.
Well, I wasn't entirely sure. I admitted that, but I was just saying the percentage because I went to find it anyway.
don't start using other source documents for, judging the accuracy of our show, please.
Yes.
We have a hard enough time as it is. So if you want to learn more about the show, if you already don't know, like where have you been? Head over to airlinepilotguy.com and you can find out about the crew and the community, merchandise, the coffee fund, and so much more. Plain Tales, by the way, has its own page as well. And you can even sign up for your own podcast feed for that wonderful.
Oh, and some reviews would be great.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey.
That 5-star, of course.
Are you telling me that nobody is going and giving reviews, Nick?
Well, I think we've probably had lots of downloads, and I think I've got about 7 reviews.
Oh, come on, folks.
A few more would be great.
Even if you don't use iTunes, please go over to iTunes, make a good review, a great review, please, of the Plain Tale, so more people will be made aware of it. That'd be really, really cool. We do appreciate that. If you want to support us financially, we really appreciate that as well. And again, airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. We have apps for your smartphones and tablets, both iOS and Android. And again, in the show notes, there's information about that as well as on the website. We're on social media too, because heck, you got to be, right?
All the cool kids are doing it. So head on over to Twitter. We're at APG Crew. You can find all of our individual contact information posted there as well. And then on Facebook, facebook.com/airlinepilotguy, all kinds of information, things that community members post, aviation related news and events and meetup information as well. And speaking of meetups and other community events, I'll hand it over to Hillel.
Yeah, he's going to tell us if you want to be a slacker.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan meetups and events. To get into the Slack team, please send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @HI11E1, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel @HI11E1, and see you in Slack.
Thank you, Hillel. Yeah, he is the one that manages that team. And a lot of good stuff going on over there. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Yay.
Well done, Jeff.
Well done.
You're purring
well done,
again.
Jeff. Awesome.
You're purring again.
I'm purring?
Purring.
Purring? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I don't hear any purring going on over here.
I don't hear anything. I still just hear static in my left ear.
It's probably the static is covering up the purring.
The purring, I'm sure it probably is. It's like white noise or, active noise. It's active noise reduction. Whatever the static is, the sound waves are exactly canceling out. Your
obnoxious noise reduction.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, recorders off.
Recorders off.
Oh, I think I just heard some thunder. I don't think it was supposed to. There was not any rain in our forecast today. Was it in yours?
Only this morning, as of this morning. Yesterday and the day before, not so much.
Interesting.
I don't think.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for hanging out with us again this week for the show. We really appreciate it.
Yes, as always.
Great bunch of people.
Nick, you need to go to bed so you can get a good night's sleep, or
so I can face the doctor in the morning. I'm just doing the audio file.
Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast because I need to stand up and walk into the bathroom.
Bye, everyone. The truth comes out.
Yes, sorry.
Thanks for
I'd love to hang out and talk, but I got to go.
Literally.
Bye.